Yo, what's good, guys? It is your host, Seiji Samurai here, and today he's here to bring you guys a new What If. This being my first ever attempt at a What If movie. What if Asta had to return by death? Guys, I'm honestly excited, I'm really excited. This is my first ever attempt at a What If movie. Seriously, guys, I hinted at this multiple times, and here it is, my first ever attempt. Now, if you guys can tell, well, I don't know if you guys can tell, but my voice is pretty tired as this was post after I was done making this video. So, yeah, I'm already pretty tired as this took a while. But honestly, I was really glad how it turned out to be, as I really enjoyed every step of the way of making this What If and just enjoy the storytelling in general. So yeah, hopefully you guys do enjoy this. Enjoy yourselves, of course. Make sure you get comfortable. As with finally all of this being said, I believe it's finally time for us to get started with this. So guys, it's your host HD Samurai, and let's begin.
You're never gonna make it, you're not good enough. There's a million other people with the same stuff. You really think you're different, man, you must be kidding. Think you're gonna hit it, but you just don't get it. It's impossible, it's not probable, you're irresponsible. Too many obstacles, you gotta stop it, yo. You gotta take it slow, you can't be a pro. Don't waste your time no more. Who the fuck are you to tell me what to do?
Alright guys, we're now going to kick off this What If with Arc 1, the introduction. However, right before we can enter Arc 1, I want to give you the origins about how Asta exactly gains the ability of Return by Death. Flashback. We will see Lichita as right now she was currently leaning up against a tree as blood was spilling from her stomach. She was currently fading out of the world of the living as she was nearing death as it seemed. Currently right now, she had just went up against Lucifero as he tried to use Libe's body to exit out and fully enter into the physical world. Luckily, Lichita used her ability to prevent him from doing so. In exchange, however, this gave Lucifero a clean hit to her body, which caused her to take fatal damage, and is actually causing her to die right now. And as Lichita was of course dying at this very instance, and she knew that during these circumstances she can't really leave Libe by himself, she decided that for now she was going to have to seal him away to protect him, as after all she didn't know if Lucifero could potentially come back or potentially end up using him again. So after that, she uses her last bit of her ability to seal away Libe into the 5-leaf grimoire. As we now turn our attention back to her. Right now, Lichita was leaning up against a tree as she was trying her hardest to remain conscious, but it was too late. Life was fading as we see flashes of her entire life begin to flash before her eyes as she would have tears leaking. I guess this is it, Lichita would say as she would have a soft smile on her face. At this, she'll be looking at the good points of her life, this being Libe, as this little gremlin of hers actually came into her life and brought her so much happiness. But at the same time, as her life continues to flash, she will remember all the bad parts, all the regrets that she had, everything. And just seeing these regrets brought Lichita to full-on breakdown as she was nearing closer and closer to death. As Lichita will watch as the very last bit of her memories begin to play, as her tears begin to drop into the ground, she'll begin to remember her last few regrets. She will regret not spending the rest of her life with Libe and watching him grow up. She will regret leaving Libe alone. But if she were to really focus and think of her real one true regret, it was the fact that she never was able to keep her happy family. And at this point, we will see an image of a young baby being left at the orphanage as her last few tears have finally dropped. As she regretted the fact she was never be able to be a mother to Asta, and that she had no choice but to leave him at the orphanage. As just as Lichita begins to pass away, she will say these last few words in her mind, saying that she loved Libe and that she loved Asta, and that even in death she'll be looming over them, and she'll be protecting them. As with those final words, Lichita would fully pass away. However, unaware to her and the two boys was the fact that her final words to them were words that were going to pass on to them the most devastating and saddest moments of their life, while at the same time bringing them the most happiness and joy that they can ever be blessed with. As this is where we're now going to kick off the story with Arc 1. So kicking off the story, we will see Asta growing up in the orphanage. Not much really changes of the boy. The boy will continue growing up. He will grow up along with Yuno, Yuno's pendant still eventually gets stolen, but just like in canon, Asta would get it back, with both of them becoming rivals for whoever will become who will become the Wizard King. Sorry if I'm stuttering. So either way, during the time as the story begins to pass, we eventually arrive at the main timeline as finally the Grimoire ceremony has arrived. Now this will cause Asta and Yuno to be excited, with Yuno hiding it better than Asta, who is legit jumping, bouncing off the walls in excitement for it. As they will eventually end up heading off over there, the Grimoire ceremonies would then begin with it being revealed that Yuno gets a 4-leaf clover, and at the same time Asta got nothing at that time. As later on during the day, Yuno would eventually end up getting attacked by 2 nobles as they thought that he didn't deserve the 4-leaf clover and that it belonged to them. But Yuno would just defeat them in an instant as they were no big deal to him at all. However, right before he could actually return back to the orphanage though, this is when Yuno would then be hit by multiple chain, as he would then be captured. He would be captured by Revchi, the Chain Mage, and an ex-Magic Knight. As Revchi will be walking towards Yuno, he would eventually end up picking up Yuno's 4-leaf clover, as Yuno tells him to give him back. Now, you know I can't do that. This is quite a high quality specimen here. People are willing to pay a lot for this, you know. At this, Yuno will try to explain to Revchi that it didn't matter because of the fact that grimoires only work for their chosen owner, but Revchi would just shrug his shoulders. It doesn't really matter to them, after all, it still makes a ginormous shiny piece of art, which people were willing to pay almost anything for. As Yuno will try to break out of the chains, not wanting to lose the only chance that he actually has at being the Wizard King. This is when, just like in canon, Asta would then run in. Now, Asta would run in and instantly begin to ask Yuno what was going on before finally connecting all the dots together and realize that, well, this guy was doing bad stuff, so he's got to stop him. So Asta, using his superior muscle and speed, will then rush towards Revchi as he intends on throwing a punch at him. However, Revchi would just laugh at Asta, slapping away his fist as multiple chains would then strike Asta at once, slamming him into the wall. Asta would begin to cough up blood as this is when Revchi begins to laugh at him before walking over and stepping onto Asta's shoulder, beginning to explain to Asta that he's able to tell exactly how much magic someone has because of these chains, and he shocks Asta by telling him that he does not have a single drop of it. As he begins to berate Asta, calling him pathetic while Asta's legit beginning to contemplate of giving up, this is when Yuno will begin to encourage Asta, telling him to never give up, and at the end of the day Asta was his rival. And after hearing this, Asta will feel a swell of determination and power, as this is when suddenly a grimoire would then appear in front of him. As after Asta will then push off Revchi off of him, he will see the black grimoire floating in front of him, the 5-leaf clover, as this is when the demon sword would then appear. Now at this point, if this were to go exactly as it did in canon, Asta will then, of course, use the demon sword to defeat Revchi and just begin to make the promise with Yuno again as they swear that one of them will become the Wizard King. However, unfortunately, plot armor is not going to do anything in this one. Now, okay, Asta will still get the 5-leaf clover, but you're telling me that Asta, a guy who doesn't even know any sword techniques at this point right now, he does not know any sword techniques. All he has is some pretty good physical strength, which we clearly seen Revchi easily be able to deflect those things and is easily able to send Asta flying even though he's very fast. So you're telling me with all this stacked against Asta, he was still able to defeat Revchi? I don't think so, even if Revchi was caught off guard. So this will be the very first instance that Asta would use Return by Death. Grabbing the demon sword, he would then rush towards Revchi at full speed, telling Yuno that he won't give up and that he will become the Wizard King. As Revchi would shoot out his chains at Asta, Asta would slice them apart, surprising Revchi as the chains were completely destroyed, as Asta would then appear in front of him. "You're mine now!" Asta would shout as he tries to bring down the demon sword onto him. However, this is when Revchi's Magic Knight instincts begin to kick in, as he would then summon out chains behind Asta as they'll stab directly into Asta's chest, killing him instantly. Yuno would be there in shock as he will see his rival, his best friend, his brother, dying right in front of him. Asta's body would then fall limp, as he would be there looking down at the ground with a hollow look, as the chains would then exit out of Asta's body as he begins to bleed out. At this, Asta sees nothing as he'll be dragged into the dark void, as the last thing he could hear was Yuno screaming out his name. I died. At this, Asta would be there in the dark void as he realized that this was it. There was no magical power up coming towards him. He was a commoner, not even given a single drop of magic. And now here he was, dying, pathetically, with no one even knowing who he was, with him not being able to accomplish his dream. No. No, no, no. I'm not giving up. No way. I'll even have to fight death. At this, Asta would try to make his strong declaration, but this is when suddenly a cold hand would then reach towards Asta's heart and squeeze it. Asta's body begins to shake entirely as Asta begins to feel phantom pain from all over. What's going on? Asta would say as he tries to shake out of it, but he can't. As this is when multiple whispers of voices beginning to tell Asta that they love him begin to fill the entire area as Asta's eyes tremble. No, no, no. At this, Asta's eyes would then open wide as he screams at the top of his lungs before suddenly the scene changes. It was now morning. In fact, it was now a peaceful morning as Asta would then wake up screaming at the top of his lungs as he will be holding onto his chest, panting as a cold sweat was dripping down his back. What was that? What was that? Asta would say as he looks around as he sees that he was in his bed. As this is when suddenly Asta's siblings would then run in as they begin to ask Asta what was going on. Yikes, Asta, can you not scream this early in the morning? I get it, it's the Grimoire ceremony, but can you at least behave? Asta would be in shock as, yes, Asta had gone back in time and was now returning back at the exact point of the beginning of the day of the Grimoire ceremony, the exact day that he died. Now at this point, the events will play out the same. They will go to the Grimoire ceremony and they will get their grimoires, except the difference in this one was the fact that Asta during this entire time was quiet. He was getting flashbacks to all the events that were happening. His expression being sorrowful and honestly full of worry. As during this entire time, Asta was just thinking about what was going on. It didn't make sense. How is he alive? How was he here? What was going on? And it didn't even register to Asta that he wasn't given a grimoire as he just calmly walks out of the grimoire ceremony with everyone watching him in shock. People will of course still laugh at Asta, but Yuna will be watching Asta in shock as he for sure thought that Asta was going to be declaring something. So after getting his grimoire, Yuna would rush towards Asta, while Asta himself was already far away from the grimoire ceremony and just wandering around. What is going on here? This shouldn't be happening. As Asta was walking around aimlessly, this is when he would then suddenly bump into someone. Sorry about that, Asta would say in a deadpan tone, as this is when the man would just tell Asta that it was alright before walking off. However, as he does, Asta would then catch a glimpse of his face. "It's you!" Asta would shout as he ends up jumping away, as this is when it was revealed that it was Revchi. Revchi would look at Asta with a raised eyebrow as Asta would then scream at him, calling him a jerk for killing him last time. What? What are you talking about? Asta would look at him confused before he decides to shake his head as he realized that this man was here to do bad things. Well, since he's far away from Yuna, that means I actually have time to stop him. If I stop him here, then at this, Asta would then gain resolve as he then gets into a semi-boxing stance, I guess. Asta never really fought with these fists besides just aimlessly throwing punches. As this is when he rushes towards Revchi, declaring that he will stop him now before he actually does bad things to anyone else. However, this is when Revchi would just scoff at Asta. As Asta would throw a punch, Revchi would dodge out the way. And this is when the chains would then suddenly appear, holding down Asta. Dang it, Asta would say, as he tries to break out of these chains with his full force, but even that wasn't enough. Holy crap, kid. You don't even got a single drop of mana. You're worthless, Revchi would say. Asta hearing this would once again feel a fatal blow to his pride and everything, honestly. As getting reminded again that he did not have a single drop of magic was painful. As this is when Revchi would then look at Asta before scoffing and walking off, throwing Asta to the side with his chains, telling Asta that he wasn't even worth it and that he didn't even deserve his attention. Now, as Asta would see Revchi beginning to walk away, he would get flashbacks about what happened last time, as he remembered how Revchi captured Yuno. And of course, not wanting this to happen again, Asta would run towards him foolishly again, telling him that he won't allow him to get Yuno's grimoire. And of course, Revchi seeing Asta approaching would begin to slap him away, over and over and over again. But this is Asta we're talking about, and no matter how many times he gets slapped around, he will try to get up, saying that he will never give up. And Revchi seeing this would then sigh. You know, kid, You're really annoying. You could have actually lived if you just didn't bother me and mind your own business. Oh well. See you later, you useless fool. At this, Asta would look at Revchi as this when suddenly multiple chains would then sprout out and stab into Asta's chest again, killing him for the second time. Return by Death activates again as Asta was transferred into the void, once again felt the cold undead hand grabbing onto his heart as he hears the multiple whispers of someone saying that they love him. Asta will wake up back at the Grimoire ceremony once again in his room, as this is when, of course, the rest of the orphanage kids would then rush towards Asta, telling him to get ready. The Grimoire ceremony was beginning. I'm back, Asta would say. As this is when Asta would then look down at his hands, as he would look down at his chest, legit like opening up his shirt to see if there was any injuries, but no, there was none at all. Connecting the pieces from the two events that happened, that's when Asta would then realize it. I came back from the dead. I came back to life. Oh my god. Am I a zombie? Asta would think as he would actually like beginning to run around thinking that he can't become the Wizard King if he's a zombie. Well, maybe. As he begins to roll around and begin to wonder what's going on. And after a while of this comedic thing happening, Asta would finally settle down. If I come back, that means that guy's gonna approach again. And just the thought of Revchi also would feel a chill go down his spine, as that man had killed him 2 times. As he would then begin to get up, as they will call him once again for the Grimoire ceremonies, Asta would then head off. So the same events would replay this time, and unlike in canon where Asta would actually go inside, Asta in fact tells him that he'd rather stay outside in this one, as he decides to wait for Revchi. Now Asta knows that he can't really do anything about this right now, as he wonders about telling the rest of the orphanage, or heck even telling Yuno, so that way they can prepare. But then again, Asta knows that it would probably sound extremely crazy if he just ran in there and be like, hey, I came back from the dead, and I saw you getting captured, your Grimoire getting stolen, I died 2 times. Like, tell me right now, does that not sound crazy to you? Come on now. So as Asta contemplates about what his next move is, or how exactly will he stop Revchi, this is when suddenly Asta wouldn't hear something moving towards him. At this, Asta would turn his face to the side as he would see a black and red grimoire floating in front of him. Well, actually, it was just be a dirty grimoire, but it was a grimoire nonetheless, as this is when the pages would then flip to reveal a black blade, the demon sword. Asta would be there looking at the blade as he remembers from the very first timeline how he got it. Right, I got a grimoire, Asta would say as he grabs onto the blade, as he instantly notices that it was pretty heavy, but thanks to Asta's training, he's able to wield it and swing it easily. Asta begins to take a few swings with it, as they were just some basic swings, nothing too impressive, as Asta would look down at it. I don't know what to do, Asta would say, as he doesn't know a way to stop Revchi. He was too weak. He didn't have a drop of mana, but he had a grimoire, had a very blunt blade right here, which seemed to do some very powerful damage. So with this, Asta would then resolve himself. I'm not gonna die again. I won't allow Yuno's grimoire to be captured. And I'm gonna beat that Revchi guy. And when I do, I'm gonna become the Wizard King, Asta would say. As he resolves himself into the sky, this is when he then prepares for the following battle. So at this point, the events will begin to prepare just like last time. So Yuno would defeat the 2 nobles as they were trying to snatch away his grimoire. He will defeat them, Revchi will make his appearance, he will capture Yuno, and begin to say that he was going to take Yuno's grimoire. Now, unaware to Revchi though was the fact that Asta was watching all of this from above. He was waiting for the perfect time to strike. That was his only opportunity to defeat Revchi. Wait for the moment that Revchi lets his guard down. Now, I can already tell that this may seem a little bit out of character for us, but you gotta realize something. Asta died 2 times to this guy, alright? The first time, he failed at saving Yuno. The second time, he rushed in there blindly. So, of course, seeing the fact that rushing in blindly was not going to work 2 times, Asta decides that he was going to try a different approach. Although he doesn't really like using him much, it was so far the only thing he can think of at this very moment. However, there's one interesting thing that actually happens here, a little bit of a note here, is the fact that as Asta was doing this, he's kind of training up his body, as his body was slowly adapting to the surroundings. I guess you could say it was similar to how Goen in Hunter x Hunter was able to pretty much nearly use Zetsu when he was trying to get the small little badge from Hisoka. So yeah, it was almost as if he was blending into the area. as Asta would be there analyzing everything about Revchi, all the way to the amount of times that he blinks his eyes, to every single time he were to take in oxygen into his nose. Asta would be there analyzing him, studying everything, finding the perfect moment, until eventually he find it, the time to strike. As Revchi was finally done laughing at Yuno and was about to walk off, Asta would see it, an opening. As using his muscles to the fullest capability, Asta would then dash towards Revchi at full speed. Holding the Demon Slayer sword, he would then swing at full capacity directly into the side of Revchi's neck. As the man himself was so caught off guard that he didn't even have time to activate his chain magic. What the fuck? As he tries to finish it, it was too late, as Asta would slam the Demon Slayer sword directly into his neck. Now, I'm just going to say this right now. Revchi is dead, alright? Because, let me tell you right now, it doesn't matter if that sword is blunt or not. This man, Asta, had just swing at his neck, alright? Not at like the shoulder or anything. His neck, full force, with a ginormous heavy ass blade, dude. Yeah, that's gonna kill you either way. Doesn't matter, buddy. So yeah, Revchi dies in that one, as his neck would be twisting at a very odd degree angle, something that humans should not be possibly able to do, as his body was slammed against the wall full force. Asta would be there looking at Revchi in shock as he was sweating and panting. I did it. I did it. I beat him, Asta would say, as Yuno will be watching all this in shock, as he will be staring at Asta, who later on that day didn't even enter inside the Grimoire ceremony. So he had no idea what was going on with Asta, but he would see that Revchi's spell would then be released, as he will be released from the chain, and just as he does, Asta will then grab Yuno's Grimoire before returning it back to them. Here, I got your Grimoire back, Asta would say with a smile. Yuno will be looking at Asta before looking at Revchi's dead body, as he'll be wondering how Asta even did that. How did Asta do that strike? How did Asta even do any of this? Did he know Revchi was coming? What was going on? But right now, Yuno had decided to put all those thoughts to the side, as this is when he tells Asta to follow him, as this is when they finally end up arriving to a certain area. Sticking out his fist, this is when Yuno wouldn't tell Asta that they finally did it. Seeing the fact that Asta had a grimoire, it was about time they finally redeclare it. Asta, realizing what was happening, would then nod his head, as he wouldn't stick out his fist as well, as this is when they both declare that they will become the Wizard King, and they won't lose to each other. As Yuno and Asta would then smile at each other, finally giving out this final promise, we can now move on with the rest of the story of Black Clover. So the rest of this arc would continue on the same, with Asta and Yuno getting their months of training, and after that they were now able to go to the Magic Night exams. They'll soon arrive at the exams, they'll take the exams with everything happening the same way as possible. The only difference I would say in this one was the fact that Asta would be slightly stronger, mostly due to the fact that after the encounter with Revchi, Asta really pushed himself hard. Like, he trained, and not only that, but Asta's senses got extremely better, which would make him learning Ki later on way better. Not the Ki from Dragon Ball, I mean Ki from Black Clover, allowing him to sense attack and everything. I'm not going that far, okay? Or at least, not for this what if. Maybe in a potential future one, who knows, move on. So, after a while, they would take the exams. Asta would pretty much fail at almost everything except for the 1v1 battle, and this is when he then encounters Yami, who decides to place Asta into his crew, mostly because of the fact he liked him. And Asta himself would of course be added to the Black Bulls, and the Black Bulls would of course instantly get along with Asta until finally it was finally time for the baptism. The baptism would kick off, and like I said, the same thing would happen just like in canon, with Asta going up against Magma. And Asta would of course do the same thing as he did, deflect the magic, which this time actually Asta remembers that he can deflect magic more often now, mostly due to the fact that, again, after the experience by Return by Death, Asta has the ability, well, his memories are now like way better this time, especially since he's not going to be forgetting things as easily now. So he's going to keep in mind about the ability to deflect attacks with the blunt side of the blade. So after that following day, Asta would meet up with the other recruit, this being Noelle, as she would have straight up tried to attack Asta for being insolent and being disrespectful, but she'll miss her attack, which leads to her running away and saying that she quits. Later on, eventually, Asta would be outside just wandering around before he encounters Noelle, seeing the fact that she completely sucks at using her magic, which causes her to fluster, freak out, causing her to turn into a sphere of water, with Asta saving her. So, I'm just going to say this, most of the events play out exactly the same. All the way until it was finally time for them to go do their first mission. This being the fact that, well, let's just say Magma and Yami had lost a bet, and they now owed the village chief a favor. So with Crazy Cyclone, Magma would take Noelle and Asta to the area where they're going to do their mission, where Asta would just beat up on a bunch of boars. However, just as he does this is when at the village we will see that Heat had arrived along with his men as they begin to attack and terrorize the village. As this is where he actually will kill the chief of the village, and this will draw the attention of both Magma, Asta, and Noelle. So rushing at the area at full speed, Asta and Noelle as well as Magma will then arrive at the area, with Asta arriving first. He will cut up the attacks that Heath would send at him. However, this is where, I'm sorry, but another instance of Asta dying would occur. As in this one, Asta would arrive at the scene, and although he was talented with his sword, unfortunately, Heath was on a higher level. As Heath would see Asta beginning to deflect his attack as well as cut up the smoke while protecting the villagers, this is when he decides to pull a dirty trick. He summons out a ginormous amount of icicle spears above the villagers as he declares that he will just have to wipe them out all at once, with Asta realizing that he can't deflect or destroy all of them at once. Luckily, Magma would arrive to stop the attack. However, seeing the fact that Asta was distracted, he would then summon out a ginormous sharp icicle spear as it would stab directly into Asta's stomach. No! Asta would shout as he would look down and see that he had a ginormous hole through his stomach because of the icicle spear. You got arrogant, boy, and now you'll pay the price. We got no time for you. So move, you insolent brat. After hearing this, Asta's vision will fade as he would collapse on the ground, his body quickly losing strength. Magma and Noelle would see this as they try to call out to Asta, but unfortunately for them, it was too late. As Asta's vision begins to fade, he will begin to see the rest of it beginning to play out. Without Asta, Magma soon falls and soon dies along with him. And Noelle, due to the fact seeing both her teammates die, as well as seeing the villagers put her trust in her, she will try her best to try to protect them. Unfortunately for her, it doesn't last for long, so Heath and his men would eventually end up slaughtering her as well as the rest of the village. After that, Heath and his men would scour the entire village looking for the stone, but unfortunately for them, Nero had already taken it and left. As after seeing Asta fall, she just decided that heck, take the stone and leave. So with that was the end for that following timeline. We will hear the ReZero soundtrack as Asta would then return back, as it was exactly the same day as before, right before they head off to their first mission. Asta, what are you doing? Hurry up. You don't got time all day. Also, we hear Magma's voice as he right now was shooken up. He had seen things that played out as he was fading into the darkness, as he was honestly shaken up by the whole thing. This was way worse than when he failed to save Yuno's grimoire. This guy was strong, Asta could tell. As Asta would be trying to calm himself down, he would walk over to Magma as the events begin to play out the same. They go over there, they saw a few boars, Heath would then attack. However, right before Heath could really full on attack the village, Asta would actually arrive there much sooner. As soon as he even felt the bad feeling running over him that Heath was there, he would instantly take off to the village. Sure, this happened 3 times before Heath actually showed up, but still, it happened nonetheless. Asta would arrive, he would cut through the smoke with his anti-magic blade. We were finally swinging a full attack at Heath, who blocks it with an ice shard. Great, even more of annoyance. But perhaps, do you know where the magic stone is? Heath would say, while Asta himself just didn't know what he was talking about. Right now he was focusing on protecting the old man. The chief of the village would thank Asta as his grandchildren would run towards him, thanking Asta as well, as he was legit a few feet away from dying. Asta himself would tell him not to worry, keeping up a fake bravado, but right now he was sweating. I gotta keep it together. I gotta keep all of them together. I can win. Yeah, I'm gonna beat this guy easily. And when I do, I'm gonna become the Wizard King. With that brave determination, Asta would tell Heath that he has no idea where the stupid stone was, but he knew one thing, and that was the fact that he was gonna beat him. Rushing towards Heath, using all his muscles' power, he was swinging the Demon Slayer sword, causing Heath to dodge, as this is when the rest of their men would then attack Asta. They would send icicle shots at Asta, who seeing this would then suddenly flip the blade on its blunt side, as he would then deflect all the attacks right back at him. At this, the rest of the men will be in shock, as they have no choice but to block some of the attacks, with some of them actually getting injured from it. So he's able to cut up magic, and he's able to deflect it. Heath was analyzing Asta's sword as well as his abilities, trying to assess if he was going to be a much bigger threat than they anticipated. Luckily, already seeing Asta's abilities, he could already tell that Asta had a strong ability, but at the same time, it had an easy counter to it. Simple. removed the sword from the equation, and Asta was practically useless, as even right now he can sense zero mana from Asta. So with this, he's going to tell his men to prepare themselves, as he tells them that they're going to have to rush this much sooner since they're still behind schedule. As Asta himself prepares to defend any of their attacks, this is when Magma and Noel will then arrive, as now the three of them together, they'll begin to attack against Heat's men. Unfortunately for them though, this would not be, as in this timeline, once again, Asta would fail. Now, at first, things were going pretty good. Asta being able to deflect the attacks, Magma coming in with the heat, and Noelle, she will eventually end up forming the sea dragon's cradle. However, this is where things would then take a bad turn. As Asta was deflecting the attacks, making sure everything was going good, Heath would then see an opportunity. There's one thing that Asta still had no idea exactly how to face off against, an enemy who knew to actually adapt to Asta's abilities. Now you gotta remember, in the previous timeline, Refchi forgot about the memories, and even though he was an ex-Magic Knight, Asta had actually prepared for him, actually took time ahead, and was able to get a clean blow in. But this time, Asta just rushed in blindly, like he usually does. And due to that, this made Heath actually be able to see Asta's abilities firsthand. So Asta did not really anticipate for Heath to adapt to him and his abilities, as this is when Asta would then block away a few more of these icicle shards sent at him, before suddenly this is when Asta would then realize it. My arms, Asta would say. At this, he would see it as multiple miniature icicle shards were stabbing into Asta's arms, actually cutting some of the nerves. This would effectively cause Asta to lose strength in his arms and causing his Demon Slayer sword to drop onto the ground. As Asta would be there in shock, Magma would be telling Asta, asking him if he was alright, before he then gets swarmed by multiple icicle shards. This causing Magma to be caught off guard for a few seconds. They would have landed an effective, clean, and fatal blow into Magma as he collapses onto the ground. Magma, no! At this, Asta would look at the man Heath, who stares at Asta, forming multiple icicle spears in front of him. You put up a good fight, Magic Knight, but unfortunately for you, it was worth nothing. Also be glaring at Heath as he tries to pick up the sword one last time, as he tries to swing, but unfortunately it was too late. Also will be barraged by multiple icicle shards, as he would die. And just like that, the timeline ends, as Asta would fade. As now Asta will be transported into the dark void, he would then hear it, the multiple whispers of someone saying that they love him, as well as a cold hand reaching towards his heart as he feels a cold sweat. No, I can't fail, Asta would shout, as he shouts that he's not giving up, not yet, as this is when he would then return back to his original save point. He will be there as Magma will be calling Asta to hurry up as they don't have all day, with Asta just walking there quietly. This will of course catch Magma and Noel, as even though they did not know Asta for long, they knew that he wasn't the one to just settle down and just be quiet for some unknown reason, but they decided to go along with it. As they were traveling, Asta was trying to rearrange the information as he realized that he had gone slightly arrogant. Heck, not even slightly, he did get arrogant. He went in there facing off against Heath, thinking that he was going to be similar to some of the men he fought during his training, or heck, he was going to be similar to Revchi. But no, Heath was way stronger than that. As Asta was trying to contemplate exactly what to do, or how exactly would he counter this is when Asta would then suddenly arrive at the area with the events still playing out the same. He slays a few boars, and Heath and his men would arrive at the village. This time, however, Asta would actually slay the boars much quicker, causing the black bulls to return back much sooner, just as Heath and their men would then arrive. Hey, what are you doing here? I don't remember authorizing you to be inside my village, Magma will say as he tries to act all tough, only for the village chief to slap him on the head. Come on, Magma, be respectful. Hello, sir, how can I help you? At this, Heath says nothing until suddenly this is when he then forms multiple icicle shards all around the entire group of villagers who were currently right now just standing there outside. What? The chief of the village would then say, as this is when he would then ask them for the stone. Asta, however, this time was prepared. I won't lose again. Not this time. I won't die. At this, also declared this in his mind, as this is when Asta would then shout at Magma to shoot a fireball as big as he can up into the air, as this is when he rushes towards Heath and the rest of their men. Of course, Magma instantly hopping into action, being surprised that Asta was doing this, and seeing the change in Asta's personality in general, he would still do so nonetheless. As Asta would swing, this is when one of Heath's men would then step up, telling Asta that he was arrogant as he shoots off an icicle spear. However, Asta seeing this would then smirk. Gotcha. At this, Asta would swing back using the blunt side of the blade to send it directly at Heath, who blocks it with an icicle spear, creating a small bit of mist. And what exactly is your plan here? Heath would say, as he looks through the mist, trying to find Asta. However, he sees that Asta wasn't there. What? He would say. At this, he would wonder where Asta was until suddenly he would then see a silhouette appearing behind him. Got you, he would say, as he swipes at the silhouette, only to see that Asta was not there. At this is when suddenly another voice would then shout out, I have you now! Asta would shout, as he would then appear right beside Heath with his Demon Slayer sword swinging at full strength directly at Heath's stomach. He would get the blow full directly into his stomach, as he would then be sent flying and crashing to the nearby village walls. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about, Asta would shout, as everyone will be in shock of Asta's feat of strength, as well as the fact he took care of their leader, or at least that's what they think is their leader, while Heath himself was in pain, wondering how the heck Asta was able to get right beside him so fast. And here's the thing, Asta had thought of a strategy. During the time when he was taking care of the boars, as well as on the travel on the way here, Asta's battle IQ begins to kick in, as it has increased, obviously, as Asta actually remembered during the time how Heath's magic seems to be a combination of both ice and mist, or at least something similar to the two. So Asta, using this opportunity, he decided that maybe he could use the mist against Heath himself, since Asta does not have any magic, so it's going to be quite difficult for Heath to sense him. Now, if you're wondering how Asta exactly knows that no one can sense him, well, I mean, bro, he lives with Yuno. He legit is in the Black Bulls, where many of them tell him that they can't even sense a even drop of mana onto Asta. And also, he also got told by Repchi. So, of course, Asta, using everything he has at his advantage, will use it. So, Asta, using this opportunity, he'll kind of move around, forcing his body to move, being able to dodge out, do his attack. And since he can't exactly sense Asta, Asta is able to get right next to him in an instant, using his superior muscle, speed, and the ability not to be sensed to land a clean and fatal blow onto Heath. As Heath himself was trying to get up, as he feels a multiple amount of broken ribs just from that one blow, this is when the rest of Heath's men will then try to attack Asta. Oh no you don't, Magma will shout, as he then shoots out a generous amount of fireballs directly at the rest of the men, as they get hit by the attack and soon get knocked out. At this point, Asta would be there looking up in a smile. I did it. I did it, Asta would shout, as finally, after 2 attempts, he was able to finally beat Heath and his man and save the rest of the village. Now, as Asta was cheering, we will now flash forward, as after that, Heath and his men were captured, and this is when they were interrogated by, well, Magma, who pretty much tells them that they will be going behind bars for a very long time. However, this is when Heath and his men tell them that that was not going to be happening, and that since they failed, they were practically useless, as Heath would then activate a tool or a magic spell, which pretty much caused them to self-destruct and end themselves. Man will be pissed off, but Asta, he'll be disgusted. I don't get them at all. How exactly do people can go throughout their lives, throwing away their lives so casually, Asta would say, as he himself has, even though he has seen that he's able to bring himself back from the dead, doesn't mean that he wants to exploit it. After all, he now knows what it's like to die, and he can very well say that he is not one to easily throw away his life like that. In fact, he probably can never see himself doing that, or at least that's what he thinks for now. As after this, we can now move on with the rest of the story. Not much really changes on this one, as they return back, they end up getting a star from the Wizard King, and after that, they decide to run a couple of errands, with Vanessa wanting to help out the rookies, as they also had gotten their recent paycheck, with Asta wanting to immediately give all his funding to, well, the orphanage. This is when Yami would then tell Asta to keep a little bit since he earned it. Now, Yami had actually heard from Magna about what Asta did, as well as the strategy he pulled, and he was fairly impressed with the brat, so he decided to give Asta a little bit more of a bonus on that one. Now, Asta, of course, wasn't really thrilled with the idea about keeping a little bit of money, since he didn't really know what to do with it, but he decided to take it along. And after that, Vanessa, Asta, and Noelle would then head off, with Vanessa trying to help Noelle control her magic better. And at that same instance, I'm going to make a change to the following events here, as in this one, instead of buying a little frog toy, Asta would actually find a ginormous haul of weapons. Now, these weapons would not require much magic. Like, there was no like magic swords in here or anything. They were just casual weapons. Now, most people would just ignore it, but Asta would just walk towards it as he would see a bow and arrow. At this, he would see a ginormous set of arrows on the side with this bow, as Asta will be kind of, memorized by it. Oh, you like what you see there? A man would say, as he would look at Asta with a cheeky smirk, telling Asta that it was a one of a kind, and begin to splab a bunch of lies, while Asta himself was focusing on the bow and arrow. As he looks down at his hands, he remembers what happens during the fight against Repchi, as well. Sorry, my throat was getting a little bit dry. Against Repchi and Heath, as he remembers that he needed to sneak the both of them just to win. With Heath, sure, he tried head-on collision, but at the same time, he didn't really, as he had to pretty much do a fadeaway just to win against the man. And with Repchi, he legit full-on sneaked him. At this point, Asta realized that rushing headfirst into things was no longer working anymore. He thought it was, but it isn't. And sure, Asta is like very skilled with a sword, but when it comes to long-range fighters, Asta has a very bad disadvantage with them. So as Asta was thinking this, he was thinking that maybe there was a way to switch up his style. He's not saying that he's going to completely like forget about wielding a sword, but it's good to have other options. And I know you might be thinking like, bro, this is a little bit too clarity for Asta, or at least I know some of you might be thinking that. But the reason for this one is because of the fact that, like I said, Asta has been, like, his mind has been more open due to the fact that he's died already 4 times now. And with each time he died, Asta's mind had opened up more and more times, forcing him to adapt, forcing him to evolve, and forcing him to begin to plan out for things that he normally wouldn't have prepared for. So as Asta realized that he needs more of a range, and also needs to realize that, hey, I need like more versatility on this one, as sure, wielding a sword is good, and he does know how to fight with a sword at least, it's better to keep his options open. As after all, even though he can deflect magic, what if the magic goes too fast that he's not able to like take care of it? Or what if he sees an open shot, a clean blow to his enemy, but he's just too far distance to even land the blow? So seeing these range of thoughts just like dancing around Asta's mind, this is when Asta would then try to buy the bow and arrow, with the man even throwing in a sweet coat for Asta, saying the fact that this would actually be included with it if Asta were to pay an extra price. So needless to say, Asta lost every last bit of money that he had in exchange for a small little frog toy and a bow and arrow with a cool coat that Asta actually gets. So as Asta returns back with the others wearing his coat, as well as the fact that his bow and arrow actually went through a very interesting transformation. As soon as Asta has gotten the bow and arrow, it would actually take in a drastic transformation, as it would transform into a black and red bow and arrow, with the arrow it would just turn into a black arrow. It looked kind of rusty actually, as they will be absorbed into the grimoire, with Asta looking at it in shock as the book would then close and return back to Asta's satchel. So yeah, Asta effectively now has a bow and arrow in his grimoire, as well as a new page and a new chapter to his 5-leaf grimoire. So later on, the events still play the same with Asta returning back. The Vanessa would actually compliment Asta on his, his coat, as it matches really well with his clothing. Well, Asta, of course, blushing a little bit at the compliment, but says that, it was all fun and everything, and it looked cool. And at the same time, a robber would come in, stealing a bag from an old lady, this being the Wizard King, which Asta would just prevent him with a single swipe from his blade. And after that, he would return back to purse the old lady as the Black Bulls would then head off, with the Wizard King revealing himself, as he says that this new generation has been very interesting, as we now move on to the second arc of Black Clover. Now, the second arc will kick off the exact same way as it did in canon. They will discover a dungeon, and they will ask for a Magic Knight squad to go after it, with the Black Bulls and the Golden Dawn forming a team, which they do not know that they were formed in a team together to go take care of the dungeon. Now, during the time before they enter into this arc, Asta will be training with the bow and arrow, and just like you expect, he sucked ass at it. What, you thought he was going to master it in the very beginning? No way. But he does end up picking it up pretty quickly, as every single day, as a part of his training, Asta would actually shoot over 1,000 arrows a day. 1,000 of them trying to hit a small little spot that he formed on a tree. He'll be doing this every single day, with Asta sometimes hitting the tree, sometimes not, but at the end of the day, he was adapting. He was getting quicker and quicker and better when it comes to hitting the target, and just better at accuracy and just using a bow and arrow. To the point where now Asta's actually make a pretty mid-range shot with ease now. Long range though, he still has difficulties. But nonetheless, Asta was improving. And another cool thing was the fact that Asta actually begins to learn more about his grimoire, as each time Asta would shoot out the arrows in the entire area and he would go to pick it up, something weird would actually happen as the grimoire would just open up his pages, as all the arrows that Asta shot out would then be absorbed right back into the grimoire. As Asta would see this as a very cool mechanic and something that he really, really liked to use. He tried doing the same thing with the Demon Slayer sword, but unfortunately, it didn't really pan out that well. So yeah, it only worked for the arrows. Which the reason for this one is because of the fact that Libe is still learning how to use his abilities as well, along with Asta. So yeah, that was happening. But moving on. So eventually, Asta, Luck, and Noelle would then be sent out to take care of this dungeon, to which they do so. And instantly, as they enter inside the dungeon, they just instantly begin to encounter multiple traps because of Luck. He begins to activate them all willy-nilly, with Asta having to take them down. And during the time of just acting these traps for fun, Luck would then head off to take care of an imposing threat, or just because of the fact he sensed a battle. And during this time, as of course Noelle would try to berate him for his bad behavior, she would then be captured into a trap, causing her to panic and scream out in terror, as Asta then prepares to save her. However, right before he did though, this is when a wind blast would then be shot out, destroying the trap in an instant and freeing Noelle, causing her to be let down. At this, Asta would then look up into the sky, as this is when it was revealed that it was Yuno and the Golden Dawn team. Their encounter goes pretty similar to canon, with Asta and Yuno declaring that they were both rivals, introducing themselves to their other teammates. Now, instantly, Asta was met with scorn from Klaus, as he views them both as nothing more but commoners and people who are below them. With Noelle being awkward around Mimosa because she thinks that Mimosa was being, like mocking her and insulting her, pretty much like the rest of her royal family. But nonetheless, as Asta and Yuno were talking, they would soon head off their different ways, with Asta declaring that they will finish the dungeon first before Yuno, with Yuno telling him that it was not even a chance. So after that, they'll soon arrive to when Luck would finally arrive at the position exactly where a fight was happening, to which, of course, Luck would lose. Alright, he was on the losing side. However, still at the same time though, Lotus would make his escape, with the Black Bull soon arriving and saving Luck. And after doing that, they'll finally snap Luck out of his weird, battle crazed state, as Luck apologizes for heading off before telling them that something else was going on. In a different location, we'll see that Mars has made his arrival. And just as Mars has made an arrival, he would attack the Golden Dawn team, with Yuno being the last one standing. As Yuno would form a ginormous wind attack, preparing to deflect the attack of the ginormous mineral blade, this is when Asta would then appear. At this, Asta would swing his Demon Slayer sword, destroying the blade in an instant, asking Yuno if he was alright. Yuno will be looking up at Asta in shock, as this is when Mars will be wondering who exactly this boy was and how exactly was he able to destroy his mineral blade. Now, this is when the rest of the Black Bulls would also arrive, as Asta would look at the Golden Dawn to see that they were heavily injured. Guys, we have to help them out. Don't worry, I'll take this guy on, Asta would say. Now, of course, hearing this, Mars would scoff at this, telling Asta that he was a weakling and that he stood no chance, as he would create multiple mineral blades. Now, Asta seeing the mineral blades would instantly gulp, but he would then harden his eyes as he begins to deflect them and begins to fight against Mars. The fight goes pretty similar to canon, actually, as Asta would be way faster, I guess. I mean, not way faster, he would be at the same relative speed. But the thing is, Asta would have way less injuries, mostly due to the fact that he was destroying the blades much faster. And also because of the fact he was dodging them much quicker because of the fact of his, multiple loops by now. So as this was happening, this is when Mars would then create a multiple clone army of himself to try to attack the others, which Asta, seeing this, would then tell the others to watch out. Luckily, Luck and Noelle would then hop in, as they decide to also begin to try their best to help out, with Noelle forming a sea dragon's cradle to protect Mimosa, with Luck just rushing in, destroying as many mineral clones as he can. Now, eventually, focusing back on the fight, Asta will be doing the same thing as he does in canon, until eventually he ends up getting hit by a powerful attack by Mars, causing it to destroy a little bit of Asta's cloak, and causing Asta's whole entire physique to practically show, the torso. So just like that, the same events will play out in canon, with Mars giving his speech about Asta, and Asta declaring that he didn't care, and that his magic was never giving up. However, unfortunately, I'm going to say that in this one, Asta would die against Mars, again activating another instance of Return by Death. This time it would actually be kind of anticlimactic, as Asta was legit, he legit was able to defeat Mars this time. But this time with way more ease. It was just the fact that thanks to all these minerals all around the area and so many sharp edges, Asta didn't accommodate for the fact that there were so many edges and sharpness around Mars that he ended up getting stabbed by multiple miniature fragments directly into his stomach. As Asta would feel these things casually just hanging there, as he would cough up a little bit of blood, he would then collapse down on his back as the rest of the Black Bulls try to rush towards him. Yuno would rush towards Asta as quickly as possible, using his wind magic to boost him, but it was too late. As Asta would be looking down at his stomach, he would be cursing. "Dang it, not again," Asta would say, as we would hear the ReZero soundtrack. So, later on that day, Asta would wake up as he would see himself now again during the beginning of that day entirely, as the events of the dungeon had not happened yet. Asta would realize that he, of course, lost, which, yes, Asta considered it a loss. Sure, he was able to defeat Mars and get him out of that generous golem form, but he still lost to Mars nonetheless. He died. So with that, Asta then gets up as he prepares for Mars much sooner. So with that, he does the same thing as they do in canon, enter the dungeon, do the same thing, encounter the Golden Dawn, luck leaves, all that stuff. But the difference in this one was the fact that Asta would arrive towards luck much sooner along with Noel, as he slices up the mist in an instant, as Lotus, who was making his getaway, would actually be in distance with Asta. Now Asta would of course be pissed off at Lotus for doing what he did for luck, and after the events about what happened in the other timeline, Asta was a little bit stressed, so he needed to release it. So with that, Asta exits out his bow and arrow from his grimoire, and with a simple arrow shot directly at Lotus, Lotus will then be hit in the shoulder, and the anti-magic infused with it will actually cause Lotus, his entire getaway vehicle, to completely collapse as he falls into the ground. Ow, 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 this hurts. You could have just told me to stop at least. Dang you bastard, Lotus would say, but Asta had no time for him, as this is when the grimoire would then suddenly retract the arrow back into its pages, leaving a gaping hole directly into Lotus's shoulder. As after that, Asta would then walk towards Lotus before kneeling down and telling him that he should never show his face in front of him again, or else. Now, the thing was though that Asta's voice had taken an extremely dark turn at the end, which surprised not only everyone else but also himself. As Asta, he didn't even catch his voice change during that very moment. It just slipped out on instinct. At this, Lotus would be terrified of Asta at that very moment, as he looked like a straight up demon, as he nods his head before finally crawling away, trying to get away as quickly as possible from Asta. As Noel and Luck would be looking at Asta, with Noel actually being worried, with Asta wondering what was going on with him. He didn't know exactly what's going on, but he's been noticing a few changes from him. Number one being the fact he's able to think more clearly, but that was pretty obvious, but this was not something that Asta was noticing. He was becoming a little bit cruel. Now, Asta didn't know if he liked it or not, but he decided to focus on something else, as he still had to deal with Mars. So with that, the Black Bulls would soon head off to the Mars area, or the area where they fight Mars, which they goes exactly as they did. They arrived there much sooner, just as Klaus was, there watching Yuno fight against Mars, and just as Mars would actually land a blow on Yuno, causing him to fall down, this is when Asta would then suddenly shoot out an anti-magic arrow. I can stop it this time, Asta would say. As the anti-magic arrow would then shoot through the air, it would suddenly pierce through the mineral sword that was about to slash at Yuno, causing Yuno to be surprised as well as the rest of the Black Bulls. Yes! Asta would shout mentally. As the arrow would then return back to the grimoire, Asta would then put away the bow and arrow as he then brings out the demon Slayer sword. Alright guys, we got this. We can take him down together, Asta would say. Now, Yuno will be so confused about, how Asta just pulled that off. But he could already tell one thing. It was the fact that Asta definitely got stronger. Well, if he got stronger, so can I. There's no way I'm going to lose to him. With that, Yuno then tells Asta that he will back him up, while Asta smirking, telling him not to get left behind, as this is when both of the brothers went in charge at Mars. Now, this is where we get an ultimate battle scene, as unlike in canon where Asta just took on Mars by himself, Asta and Yuno would take on Mars, as both of them with each other were able to take on Mars with ease. Mars couldn't keep up with Yuno's speed, and Asta's unbelievable amount of strength was enough to beat him in the previous timeline. So, yeah, both of them together was just overkill. Mars couldn't keep up. And after watching them go down, Like Klaus was just in shock as he begins to wonder what was the point of his rank. After all, it was very clear who was stronger between Asta and Yuno against him, and honestly, it made him find out that his rank was practically worthless. So as Asta and Yuno would then finally be done with Mars, it was finally time for them to enter into the treasure room. They'll enter the treasure room, they'll see the generous array of treasure with Asta and Yuno just being in shock of all of it, with Noel, Mimosa, and pretty much everyone just playing around with something. However, just like in canon, Mars would then get up as he would attack the Black Bulls. And in this one, the things will go exactly the same. Mars will be the first one sent flying as he was, well, in Mars' mind, the most nuisance. Although he was fast, legit Mars was this close into beating him. It was as soon as Asta appeared that things went worse. So he will be the first one sent flying as he crashed into a wall, nearly losing consciousness, as Asta for sure thought that he died at that very instant. Luckily, he was still conscious as he ends up looking up at Mars, who begins to attack Mimosa, Noel, and Yuno and Klaus. Yuno was too low on energy to really stop him, so he couldn't do anything, as this is when Mars would then attack Noel. Dang it, I can't reach them. I'm too slow, Asta would say. He can't exactly just pull out the bow and arrow and just shoot out. It would take too long. And with the Demon Slayer sword, it would take too long to even arrive there. So overall, now Deku was at an area where he just didn't have enough time. He needed something lighter, something faster. And this is when Asta would then look to the side as he would see a sword that looks directly like the Demon Slayer sword, just much thinner and slightly sharper. So of course, after seeing this, Asta would instantly grab it. Seeing as it was the only thing that was close by, he will rip it off the ground, causing it to be registered into the pages of the grimoire, as he would then rush towards Mars. Thanks to the fact that it was much lighter, Asta arrived there way quicker, and he was able to stop the attack before it injured Noel or Mimosa. As after that, the same events will play the same, with Asta being able to defeat Mars this time, with the same attack happening, Noel sharing her magic with Asta, and pretty much the rest of the Black Bulls collecting the treasure and leaving the now destroyed treasure room. So yeah, the events still play out the same. Asta would be patched up, of course, as he was still pretty injured from the whole entire battle, but now he did a much splendid job. After that, though, there was one thing that did upset Asta, and that was the fact that, well, his shirt and pretty much the clothing that he had on was destroyed. The only thing that still remained the same was his cloth, although it was pretty destroyed at the very end of it. And at the same time, though, this is when Klaus would actually apologize to both Asta and Yuno, as he realized that he judged them for their class in society, and just didn't judge them as the characters they were, as he felt deeply ashamed of himself. But Asta and Yuno would just shrug, telling him that it was okay. And this is when they finally had done it. They had completed their mission here, as we can now move on to the next arc. So the next arc rolls around pretty much the same way. The Black Bulls had now finished the mission, and Yami is too lazy to report it himself, so he tells them to go do it instead. Now, of course, during this time, Asta will be sent to recovery, mostly because of the fact Noel was quite pushy, and honestly, she just didn't like Asta moving around so much after everything he did. Now, Asta, of course, did so, mostly due to the fact that Noel was pretty scary in her own right, but also because of the fact that he actually wanted to study about the new sword, the Demon Dweller sword. He was very interested in his capabilities and abilities, as he felt Noel's magic just enter into the sword. He literally shot out a ginormous wave of water, so he was interested to wonder what exactly this thing's abilities were. So as Asta was trying to analyze it and everything, it would eventually be time for him to go off to the capital along with Noel. They would arrive there, and they will soon encounter the Golden Dawn team, who, after that, they decided to have friendly conversations. Like I said, nothing is really changing from the canon in this one. So if you see me skim by from all this, understand pretty much. They meet Julius, who, after a while, he would just be an excitement about Asta and Yuno, especially Yuno's especially Asta, since he's using a very unique form of magic, or at least he thinks is magic anyway, to do what he does, to which Asta would just reveal to him the bow and arrow, the swords, and pretty much everything about it. Julius would be surprised about this type of magic since he can't really understand it, but he could always feel his magic being sucked away by all three of these items, or four if you include the bow and the arrow itself. So, with that being said, it will eventually finally be time for Julius to actually commence the award ceremony, as this is when he then calls in the Magic Knights as he begins to promote them. Now, as they were all being promoted, this is when he then introduces young Asta and young Yuno, who pretty much had just recently completed a dungeon along with their fellow squad mates. And he tells them that they were now being here to celebrate along with them. Now, the nobles instantly did not like Asta and Yuno, as they could already tell that they were commoners and they just didn't want to mess up with them. And also, I forgot to actually mention about Asta's drip was the fact that, well, in this one, as Asta's clothing was destroyed, most of it was destroyed during the fight against Mars, Asta's clothing would then change to be a little bit more rugged, actually. More of that of an adventurer, as he will be getting, like, leather boots. He will have, like, a small little utility belt for a little bit of fashion because of Vanessa. He'll have, like, an all-black shirt. He will still wear the coat that he has on, as this time it had sleeves and everything, allowing him to insert himself in. So it was a combination between a coat and a jacket, honestly. But moving on, we will see Asta now sitting down enjoying himself, and just like in Canon, Solid would then try to pick on Noel. Now, this time, however, Asta would then step in much sooner, as he saw Noel begin to shake up just at the near presence of Solid, and when he was trying to spill water on her, Asta would just stop him before he can do it. Wow, thank you for the water, you're so kind and generous, Asta would say, as he casually just begins to sip on the water that Solid was about to dump on her. Solid would be, of course, pissed off, as he then slaps the glass out of Asta's hand. How dare you, filthy commoner, dare think to even touch me. At this, Solid would then begin to form an ice spear as he tells Asta to learn his place, while Asta, seeing things were going to already escalate, would then instantly block the attack with his demon dweller sword. Now, can we not calm things down? We were just enjoying the party and I saw you offer me a glass of water, so this is when Asta would then be surrounded by sand, as this is when the vice captain of the Golden Dawn would then step in, telling Asta that this was supposed to be a proper party and that someone of his kind should even be here. Now, Asta was now getting pissed off. First, he was trying to be mean to Noel, and now he was just insulting our commoners? Like, how low can these guys get? What was the point of being a Magic Knight if you very much hate the people that you're protecting? Asta would then suddenly cut up the ginormous sand construct, as thanks to the fact of his training, he would be able to cut it up easily, with Solid throwing a ginormous water spear at Asta. Alright, I'm having enough of this. You guys are getting on my nerves. At this, Asta would then suddenly deflect the attack back, but this time with so much force that Solid was not able to block the attack. This causing Solid to actually gain a small little cut on his cheek, surprising everyone. Asta would then suddenly point his sword directly at Solid, and he tells him that they do not deserve to become a Magic Knight. Now, this will of course lead to Nozel stepping into this one, as he tells Asta who exactly he was to really make that call, while Asta being legit barely able to stand up to his pressure. Sooner or later, Fergolian would also interfere, telling them to all humble themselves, as after that, they finally begin to settle down, with the mages now disputing themselves, with Asta actually just returning back and sitting down. So, after all these events had taken place, it was finally time for the Royal Capital Assault, as the event will kick off the same. Flames begin to erupt on the kingdom, as all the Magic Knights would turn to see it, and this is when a soldier would then run in, talking about how the kingdom was on fire. Now, instantly, the Magic Knights realize that they're under attack, and Asta, being, Asta, he'll rush out there as quickly as possible. Even though he is slightly more insightful this time, he's not going to just sit by here while people are in danger, right? It's not Asta's way. So, moving on, as the rest of the story will continue on the same, Asta would soon arrive to the point where he finds Rades and fights him. Now, he would encounter Rades as he was actually about to grab a little girl, and Asta, seeing this, would instantly make his expression darken as he brings out his bow and arrow. As this is when he suddenly shoots out an arrow at top speed, stabbing it directly into the arm of Rades. Ah, you little shit, gosh dang it, he will shout as he begins to hold onto his arm while the little girl will be watching on in shock. Are you alright? Asta would say. At this, the girl would nod her head as Asta would look at Rades, as little did Asta know that his eyes were growing cold. You sat here and had the audacity to attack a helpless little girl in the midst of danger. You're scum, Asta would say. Rades will be rolling around telling Asta to shut up and that he will make him pay for this, as this is when he tries to activate his grimoire and his magic, only to find out that it was unresponsive. What? Asta would then suddenly bring out the demon dweller sword as he walks towards Rades, as he looks at him with a look of disgust. You don't deserve any type of mana at all, Asta would say. At this, Rades will be trying over and over again to activate his magic, but it was pointless as Asta would rush towards him. As this is when Rades would try to ask Asta if they can talk it out, but it was too late. Asta would beat Rades with a single slash directly across his chest, as Rades would be sent flying and knocked out unconscious. Now, this will not only surprise the little girl, but this will also stop the rest of the zombies as they instantly begin to fall because of the fact that Radi's magic is no longer in play. He's been knocked out, and that arrow has kind of messed up with the magic. As Asta would be looking at the girl with a smile now, asking her if she was safe and everything, to which the girl would nod. This is when suddenly multiple masked people begin to arrive. They'll be all wearing white hoods as they appear all around Asta, with Asta actually being surprised about this. What? Asta would say. At this is when they all look at Asta before they chuckle, telling him that he's about to die. Now at this, Asta would instantly scoff as he brings out his Demon Dweller sword and the Demon Slayer sword, as he tells them from who. Now, this will cause the both of them to, not even the both of them, all of them to fight each other, with Asta being stuck in a situation where he's now fighting against groups of fives. Surprisingly, though, Asta was holding his own as he was deflecting the attack with the blunt side of the Demon Slayer sword, and of course, landing quick blows with the Demon Dweller sword. However, what Asta didn't account for was the fact that since he rushed in, like, relatively quickly, this is when suddenly the mages would then gain an idea as they turn to the little girl who was still there. You're so strong for a magic knight, especially one without any magic. But just like any magic knight, you all have your foolishness of weakness. The weakness to protect those who are helpless, the ones who are useless. At this, one of them would then try to attack the little girl, and Asta, seeing this, would instantly rush trying to save her. However, just as he does, Asta would unfortunately have turned his back as this was some type of tunnel vision, as right now the only thing Asta can focus on was trying to save the little girl. So he wasn't being aware of the fact that the mages were still on the attack on him and that he finally gave them an opening shot. Got you, they'll say, as this is when they'll suddenly shoot out different types of magic directly at Asta's back, who, finally feeling the intensity of the attacks turning towards him, he tries to turn around to block it, but unfortunately, he was too late. Asta will be dead once again. He'll be hit down into the ground as he feels the effects of these different types of mana hitting him, causing his body to legit spaz out as he can't do nothing. He would watch as the little girl would then suddenly end up, getting approached by those unknown mages. He will see Noelle arriving as she herself would also panic at the sight. And finally, the last thing he'll see would be Noelle screaming, and he would not even hear about the little girl. I failed. Not again! Asta would shout as he would then fall into the dark void. At this, Asta will once again be brought back as we hear the ReZero soundtrack. He'll be once again just there as he realized that he once again had failed. I failed. At this, Asta couldn't believe it. He died again. At this, Asta felt like he was making so much progress and he just died to a bunch of unknown mages. And not only that, he failed to save the little girl. At the thought about what happened, Asta would clench his fist. I need to get faster. I need to get stronger. As just as Asta would think this is when Noelle would then make her arrival. She tells Asta that they're going to be late because of him, as they had just recently been informed by Yami that they need to go to the royal capital. So with that, the events will play out the exact same. All the way until the point where Asta would stop Solid, he would stop the vice captain, they get into a little scuffle, and at the end of the day, the attack of the capital would then begin all over again. So with the attack on the capital beginning all over again, Asta would of course instantly blitz out of there as quickly as possible. He knows the exact location of Rades. He'd be rushing over there as quickly as possible, and while doing so, he'll be trying to keep track of maybe there was another major part of this attack. After all these like creatures or zombies or whatever swarming the entire kingdom, there's got to be someone else helping out Rades. He just needs to know where he is. So as Asta was rushing in, this is when he would then see Rades himself, who was about to attack the little girl. However, this time, as Asta was on the rooftop this time, he would then bring out his bow and arrow as he shoots off Rades directly into the neck, as Asta was not playing any games this time. Rades would instantly die from this as he collapses down to the ground, as the last thing he would see would be Asta looking down at him from the rooftop, what they call look. Who is that guy? Rades' last thought would be as he dies, with the little girl looking at Rades in shock, as this is when Asta would then jump right in front of her to block her from the view. It's alright. You're safe, Asta would say. At this, the girl would nod her head as she would just listen to Asta's command, seeing the fact that he's a magic knight. At this, Asta would smile at her as this is when he then takes off his coat and places it on her, telling her to hold on to it for now, since all these flames are going to be pretty harmful to her, and this coat was going to protect her for right now. So as Asta would then try to tell her that they need to get out here quickly, this is when suddenly robes begin to appear all around as the same soldiers from last time would appear. I'm sorry, but where exactly you guys think you're going? At this, Asta would see these familiar guys as he, gets pissed off. No, I'm not. No, I can't fight at full strength here. Besides, I have to get her away, Asta would say. As this is when he remembered in the previous timeline about Noelle being around the corner, so he instantly decides to do that. At this, he turns around, and this is when he then suddenly pulls out the Demon Dweller sword as he swings at full speed, actually causing a few of the mages to back up. At this, Asta using this opportunity would then suddenly end up putting the Dweller sword directly back into the Grimoire as he picks up the little girl and begins running. Stop him! They will shout as they will rush towards Asta. They'll begin to shoot off different spells at Asta, but Asta himself was actually pretty skilled at running away. Now, he did not like running away at all, of course. In fact, he practically hated it. But he understood that at this point right now, he can't do anything. As long as the girl's in danger, Asta, he can't really put up a good fight. So with that, Asta would pull out the Demon Dweller sword once again as he begins to try to stop any of their attacks while he still can. So as Asta was currently making his rounds, he would eventually find Noelle, who was rushing towards Asta. At this, Asta seeing Noelle would then smile. Yes! At this, he uses his muscles at full capability to push himself forward as he arrives in front of Noelle in an instant. At this, Noelle would be, of course, surprised by Asta's sudden appearance until this when she suddenly senses multiple sources of magic approaching them. As this is when Asta would then give the girl to Noelle. Hold her, save her. Just get away from here, alright? I can take care of it. At this, Noelle would look at Asta confused as she tries to ask him what was going on until the mages would then finally arrive. How the heck did you get here so fast? They'll be wondering, as they would then scoff before trying to attack Asta and Noelle. I said hurry up and run! Asta would shout as he brings out the Demon Dweller sword and the Demon Slayer sword and begins fighting the mages. Now, this time, things go much more smoothly for Asta, as in the last time he was able to actually keep up with them pretty well. So, with Noelle now watching over the little girl, things were good now. He was good. So with that, Asta begins to fight, taking down the mages as possible, as they, one by one, all begin to fall to Asta. As they would try to shoot as many magical spells as they can, Asta would defeat them, until eventually he finally defeats the very last one. Finally, I did it, Asta would shout. As this is when Leopold would also make his arrival known, as he chases after Asta, telling him that he wants him to be his rival. Now, Asta, of course, will be confused, but he decides to accept it, but says that they have to take care of the job for now. And just as he says that, this is when Fuegoleon would also make his arrival known. Well, I see you have things taken care of here, Fuegoleon would say, as he looks at everything that Asta was able to do. And honestly, he was impressed about the boy's strength. As this is when Fuegoleon will begin to ask Asta about how exactly he was able to do what he did, while Asta just explaining that he was just able to get them into close combat, and that's where he took care of the rest of the situation. So as they were just talking about the events that were going on, this is when suddenly Fuegoleon would then begin to get dragged down into a portal. What? Leopold and Asta would think as they rushed towards to Fuegoleon, but unfortunately it was too late, as Fuegoleon would be absorbed completely into the portal. No! Asta would shout, but this is when things get even worse, as this is when suddenly multiple mages from out of nowhere begin to appear. The last thing Asta was actually seeing was these black portals that are opening up into the sky, as him and Leopold would then be surrounded by the mages. No, 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 not like this, not like this, Asta would shout, as he just had finally saved the little girl, and now he was surrounded by this bullcrap. But he persisted anyway. Him and Leopold would instantly begin to fight, as they begin to fight the other mages off. Now, Asta, although he was quite exhausted from fighting the other ones from last time, Asta's ginormous amount of stamina from all his training that he did was able to actually help him defeat the other ones as well. And also, not only that, but he also had the help of Leopold, so yeah, they will defeat them quite easily. Although they were pretty much tired at this point, alright? They've been exhausting themselves. So as Asta asked Leopold if he can still go any further, Leopold would nod his head, until this is when suddenly a portal would then open up. As this is when more mages would then appear, but the second portal that actually opened up was then revealing to be Fuegoleon, as he falls down to the ground, missing an arm and bleeding out. Leopold, seeing his brother damaged, would then scream out in distress as he shouts out Fuegoleon's name in a panic. Asta would be there in shock too, as he saw that Fuegoleon actually, die. How? But He's a Magic Knight captain, also would say, muttering under his breath. As he begins to wonder what's going on, this when suddenly he would then be attacked by all the mages, as they will begin to jump Leopold and Asta. And at this point now, Asta has survived a total of 2 fights against them, and this was now him entering into the 3rd one. And although Asta is strong and has good stamina and everything, I mean, this boy is only human, bruh. He is exhausted. As Asta begins to fight back against these guys, unfortunately for him, things were getting quite sloppy. Thanks to the fact of seeing his brother damaged, Leopold is like attacking wildly and out of control. He'll be trying his best to attack them, but unfortunately, they'll soon end up actually landing a pretty fatal blow on Leopold. No, Asta would shout as he wonders where the rest of the Magic Knights. Where are they? Aren't they supposed to be here, saving the kingdom? At this, Asta will begin to try fighting them off now all by himself, but unfortunately for him, he'll suffer the same fate. As this one suddenly he would then be slashed across the chest by a magic spell as he falls down onto his back. No, Asta would say as he tries to get up, but unfortunately for him, it was too late. As this one suddenly they will then attack Asta all around, as Asta would then be practically blown up by their magic of hour combined, as Asta can do nothing more but watch in shock. I lost, Asta would think, as this is when he would then return back to his save point, as he returns back to the very beginning of that day. Asta couldn't believe it. He failed again. At this, he'll be gripping onto his heart as he felt the dead cold hand reaching for it as it brought him back. Asta couldn't believe it. He failed again. Now at this, Asta was now severely getting pissed off as he realized that taking care of Radius was not the only thing. There was someone else that was causing Asta to lose all these times. Someone else is there. Someone with powerful magic, I can tell. At this, Asta would then be prepared as, like I said, I'm not going to even explain everything. The events happen the same way, all the way to the capital attack. And of course, Asta, instead of rushing in there blindly, Asta decides to think about this, as then when he tells Noel to follow along with him along with Leopold. Now, both of them would be confused as to why Asta would just call them to go, but this one Asta would turn to them with a fierce expression. I said, come with me now, Asta would say, as he was not playing any games this time. Now, this will surprise Leopold, but also cause him to actually admire the brave determination that Asta had, while Noelle herself was actually shaken up by Asta screaming at her. She'd never seen Asta actually scream at anyone, at least in such a rude manner, as she was too afraid to do her usual tsundere routine. As well as the look in Asta's eyes, as Asta's eyes were very, very serious. They're full of determination and curiosity, almost as if he was daring them to try to disobey his orders. As this when Asta would then rush out the window along with Leopold and Noelle. Now, of course, Leopold would be rushing off, laughing, while if he goes and shakes his head, actually wondering why exactly Asta just called his brother and Noelle to go along. This made him curious as he tells them that as he begins to discuss the plan with the rest of the captains. So as Asta was now jumping from rooftop to rooftop, rushing as quickly as he can to Radius, for Leopold and Noelle were following right behind him. As Leopold actually had to, help Noelle because of the fact that, Noelle doesn't have exactly as good control of mana like Leopold. And not only that, she doesn't have the physical strength like Asta, so she can't really do the whole jumping from one rooftop to the other. So yeah, Leopold is mostly there to help her. Now, as Noelle was making her way, she'll then ask Asta why she wanted him to come, until this when she then sees Rady about to attack a little girl. Watch out! Noelle would shout, but this when Asta would just bring out the bow and arrow and easily kill Radius in the instant. This will surprise Leopold and Noelle as that was so fast, and it was almost as if Asta knew exactly where to hit him. As Radius will be hit in the neck, he would instantly die out, as the last thing he'll see will be Asta, Leopold, and Noelle, wondering how the frick did they get there so fast. As this is when Asta would then rush towards the little girl, asking her if she was okay, to which she would nod her head. At this was where we will then see Leopold and Noelle will also accompany him, wondering how exactly he knew where this guy was. Asta doesn't explain to them right now, as he tells them that they need to focus on a much more dangerous thing at hand, as he tells Noelle to look after the little girl and try getting away from here as far as possible. Noelle would wonder why exactly, until this is when suddenly multiple magic portals begin to open up into the sky as the mages will now fall. They make their first appearance. Seeing the bastards who actually killed in one of the previous timelines, Asta would then get pissed off as he tells Leopold to get ready for a fight. Now, Leopold, of course, seeing this would then nod, actually being excited at this, as he was excited at the prospect of seeing how strong his rival really was. as this is when they'll then fight off the mages, and just like in canon, they'll be able to defeat them with ease. And of course, seeing how strong Asta is, Leopold was even more impressed as he declares Asta to be his rival. Asta looks at Leopold for a while before he smiles, telling him sure, but they need to take care of the situation first. And just like that, just as he says that, this is when multiple portals would then open up again, as another round of mages would then appear. I can tell that the guy's here, I can just tell, Asta would say, as even though him and Leopold were fighting off these guys, he could already tell in his mind that the person who was casting the spell was here. He can feel it. And just as he says that, this is when Asta wouldn't look into a certain direction. It was almost as if his body was, instinctively telling him that it was there. Now, this will actually be the instance where Asta would actually use Ki unknowingly, as he could tell who exactly was casting these spells and where it was his location. Even though it was only for a split instance, Asta was able to tell, and the man was hiding underneath all those bodies. So it was you, Asta would think. As he finished off the last mage, this is when Asta would then see a portal begin to open up once again, as they prepare to bring out more and more mages. Not this time, Asta would shout, as this is when he suddenly ends up pulling out the bow and arrow, as he shoots off a anti-magic arrow directly into the body of corpses, as they would hit one of them. Now, at first, there was no response at all, making Asta think that maybe he was wrong, until this is when Voltos would then stand up, but right now he was currently injured from the attack by Asta. Now, he didn't get pierced by the magic arrow, but Asta did technically injure him, as he now had a pretty small slash mark across the side of his stomach. You brat, Voltos would say as he opens up a portal to get on the rooftop, as he looks down at Asta, telling him that he will pay for what he'd done. Asta seeing Voltos, he would instantly smirk. Finally, now I get the opportunity to stop him. As he begins to explain to Leopold how that guy is the one who was casting all that spatial magic. Of course, hearing this would cause Leopold to instantly get on board on beating him, as this is when more and more magic portals begin to open up, with more and more knights beginning to appear, as they all begin to fight Asta and Leopold. As Asta and Leopold would of course defeat them again, but they're running out of stamina, this is when Voltos will laugh at them, calling them beautiful, as he tells them that they don't stand a chance up to his master's greatness. As this will cause Asta to wonder who exactly the master was, as just as he was about to question him, this is when Fuegoleon makes his appearance known. Fuegoleon would appear as the tremendous heat that he was just releasing was enough to actually stop the fight completely, as Asta and Leopold will look into his direction. Voltos would also look into his direction as well, as instantly seeing the amount of bodies that were on the ground and a tired Leopold and a tired Asta, Fuegoleon would instantly take in the situation. You boys have done good, he would say, as he nods directly a proud smile at his little brother before sending a nod of acknowledgement towards Asta, who of course was surprised at this. This is when Fuegoleon would then walk in front of the both of them, telling them that he will take it from here, as this is when Voltos would then try to activate his magic portals again. Not this time, he would say, as this is when Fuegoleon would then shoot off a ginormous stream of flames directly towards Voltos, who tries to open up a portal to deflect it, but unfortunately for him, Fuegoleon was much smarter. As using the flames as a distraction, Fuegoleon would appear behind Voltos as he kicks him in the back of his head, causing him to collapse down to the ground. No, Voltos would say as he tries to activate his magic, trying to actually absorb Fuegoleon, as Fuegoleon was jumping down from the roof. And Asta, seeing this, realized that it will happen again, as he remembered Fuegoleon falling down, missing an arm and bleeding out. No, I won't allow it, Asta would shout in his mind, as this is when he brings out his bow and arrow and shoots off an extremely fast shot directly towards the spatial magic. This will cause it to instantly deactivate, with Voltos being surprised along with Fuegoleon. How did he do that? Voltos was thinking in his mind, while Fuegoleon, he didn't know exactly what it was, but seeing the way Asta had hastily reacted, he would nod his head in appreciation and thank Asta, as he will finally land a knockout blow directly towards Voltos, knocking him out, as this will be the end for Voltos. So after that, Voltos will then be captured along with the rest of the mages thanks to Fuegoleon, as he was using his binding magic. And thanks to the fact that Voltos was currently unconscious, they couldn't really take away Fuegoleon and put him exactly where Licht was. So in this timeline, Fuegoleon isn't injured. Now, of course, after this, Asta can finally relax as he has a smile on his face, happy that things were able to finally turn out okay. As he leans up against the wall, thinking for a few seconds about how close things were cutting it. As he was actually wondering if maybe, if he didn't do what he did, how many more lives could have actually been lost to this bastard. And just the thought of that made Asta's eyes hollow slightly as he shakes his head out of it. Well, at least I know one thing. As Asta looks down at his fist, he then clenches it, as he realizes that he is strong, but not strong enough. He needs to get stronger. Stronger and stronger and stronger. And little did we, as this is where we will see a change in Asta. A very big one that you're beginning to see. As after seeing the fight with Fuegoleon and seeing the fact of how, as soon as he arrived, the entire situation was practically handled, Asta begins to have this craving for strength. The strength to be able to do exactly as Fuegoleon did. The ability to just arrive and instantly everything would be okay. As inside Asta's mind, these same thoughts will be repeating in his head. After all, a king must have the strength to protect his people. They'll be repeating over and over in Asta's head as his eyes were getting hollower and hollower, until this is when he would be snapped back into reality by Leopold, who begins to talk about how amazing Asta was at fighting. Asta would, of course, nod his head, acting all hyperactive, but deep down, he was thinking of something else. As this is when we will now change scenes once again. So after that, this will conclude the Royal Capital Assault arc, and this would actually allow the rest of the story to progress even further. Eventually, the Wizard King would then return, see the kingdom that was fine. The Magic Knights would actually return, and this one Fuegoleon would then give a report explaining how Leopold and Asta, along with himself, had taken care of the entire situation. There was also Yuno, who still used the Wind Spirit for the first time in this one. Yes, he didn't use it during the dungeon. He used it during the Royal Capital Assault. So yeah, he was able to use it, and this time he's able to actually communicate with the Spirit on this one. So yes, Yuno has done that. And after that, the same speech that Wizard King gives in canon will give the same thing. And the conclusion for this arc would happen the exact same way, with Yuno wanting to test out how strong him and Asta got, with Asta deflecting a generous magic arrow, and both of them swearing that next time they'll beat the other. So, with that being said, it's time for us to move on to the next arc, Eye of the Midnight Sun arc. During this time, we will see a change at Asta's character during the very beginning of the arc, as a few months have passed since the Royal Capital, and because of that, Asta spent most of his time training. However, the training that Asta does would actually be very, very different, as Asta, while still sending money directly towards the orphanage, and still sending like a large amount of it, Asta would still have enough money to buy weapons. And the reason for this was because of the fact that after the incident at the Royal Capital, and after seeing how effective the bow was, Asta realized that he needs something for every situation. Alright, so pretty much Asta's entire mindset is that, hey, what if this doesn't happen? What if I don't have this? What if I don't have this? Yeah, so Asta realizing that relying on just 2 blades and a bow and arrow, it just simply wasn't enough, or at least to him it wasn't enough. In this universe, that definitely, it just isn't enough. So with that, Asta would buy a spear directly from the same place where he got the bow and arrow, as not only that, he would also buy a shield, as these were both for certain circumstances that might happen, as now at this point, Asta has the mindset of, hey, if something bad could happen, and there's certain weapons I can use to prevent it. As he could already understood how the bow and arrow had already shown its use, but what if the other events end up happening? For example, this shield would have actually been extremely helpful back then, as with the shield, Asta could have infused it with anti-magic, and he could have prevented a lot of the blows from even grazing him at all. So yes, Asta was expanding himself, expanding his arsenal, expanding his moveset, expanding his abilities. Asta was doing all he could. And not only that, during the few months, Asta will be training with these weapons, as we'll finally enter into this arc. So this arc would kick off the same way, with Finro approaching Asta, as they will be, he will be asked to join him and Luck to a mixer, with Asta going, not even knowing what a mixer was. And later on during that time, as the entire arc begins to play out the exact same way, we will eventually end up turning to the very point where Asta would be there along with Sister Teresa and Gauche as they try to rescue the village kids. Now, as Sister Teresa, Gauche, and Asta were all making their way there, they would soon arrive at the location where Sister Teresa begins to try healing one of the kids that were left behind. As Asta himself, already seeing the fact that one of Rebecca's siblings was left behind, Corey thought that the rest of them was probably inside the cave, as him and Gauche would run up ahead, as they tell Sister Teresa to come along with them after she's done. Now, of course, Little Kid will be scared to be left alone, but Asta would then give him his coat, telling him that he needs to be brave. So with the kid agreeing, telling Asta that he will be brave for him, to which Asta would nod. So after that, Sister Teresa, Asta, and Gauche would then rush inside, as this is when they would then see the men currently right now terrorizing the kids. And instantly seeing that, Ghost would be not even focusing on any of them and just focusing more on the fact that his sister Marie was injured, which caused him to flip out and instantly begin to attack Barrow as well as Neej. Now, Barrow and Neej were of course surprised by this as they tried to stop him, but it was pointless as Ghost was just rushing in there attacking him. However, due to the fact of Ghost being in a blind rage, Asta had to be there to legit stop most of the attacks from hitting the kids, as he cursed inside. He would be cursing out Ghost for acting so recklessly, as after that, Neej actually begins to manipulate Ghost into attacking the snowman, who would keep coming back because of Neej's magic. Now, Asta seeing this, finally decided that he had enough. But that also bring out his classic bow and arrow, and was able to actually snipe out Barrow, who was mocking Ghost, as he stabs Barrow directly in the stomach with the arrow. Barrow would of course be sent flying just from the impact of it, as this is when Asta would rush towards them at full speed. Now, thanks to Asta's specific training that he's been going through, trying to master all these weapons, as well as just his regular physical activities, Asta's able to move way quicker, as he's able to make a slash at Neej, knocking him out as well. As Ghost would finally be done with the snowman, but seeing Asta take care of it, he would be pissed. As he tells Asta to move aside so he can kill Neej for hurting his Marie, but Asta would just turn to him with a death glare. I got no time for your foolishness, alright? Innocent kids are here, and you're acting like a damn monster, alright? So beware how you act in front of me or else I'll put you down to the ground, Asta would say. Ghost would actually be caught off guard by Asta's look and honestly a little bit terrified as he backs away from him, startled, while Asta looking down, already knowing that this isn't him, this isn't how he acts, but right now they were dealing with something important here and the way Ghost was acting was not fixing anything. So with one more death glare directly at Ghost, Asta begins to interrogate Barrow, who tries to ask questions but Asta wouldn't let him, as he tells Barrow that he has no right to ask him anything, and that if Barrow wants to keep breathing, that he would answer Asta's questions. As Asta, at this point, he would slowly begin to fall into very cruel habits of his. As we already know in the main timeline, Asta doesn't really threaten people at all. But this Asta, this man, like the way he's been experiencing things and the way he's seen the effect of his failures and everything, realized that playing all nice and buddy in this world wasn't working out, alright? So with that, Asta will be looking directly into Barrow's eyes as he tells him to cough up everything and begin to explain about what he's done. So with that, Barrow begins to explain everything. He explained the whole reason why they did this. And after hearing this, Asta was of course pissed off. He knocks Barrows out. While Neej, who had woken up, would be terrified. Asta would be looking at Neej, but instantly looking into Neej's eyes, Asta is able to tell that this guy wasn't like Barrow at all. This guy actually had some innocence. He was just foolish. As Asta would stare at Neej, who begins to shake slightly at Asta's gaze, Asta would sigh, telling Neej that he's way better off than this, and that he does not deserve this. At this, Asta will look at Neej for a few seconds before finally deciding on something. He tells Neej that what he did was unforgivable. However, if Neej wants to redeem himself, he could actually give up on this life. Neej has powerful magic, something that Asta wished that he had. And although Asta can understand that Neej cared about Barrow as that was his brother, Asta understood that this life wasn't for Neej at all, and that Neej could have an opportunity. He could come to the Clover Kingdom. Sure, he will have his own struggles, as he does have to pay for what he done, but at the same time, if he's able to move past that and rise above it, Neej can become an awesome magic knight. He can live a good life. At this, Neej would listen as Asta would give this inspirational speech as he would be looking at Asta, who extends his hands towards him. And just as Neej would begin to think about it, he would actually smile for a while as he decides that maybe, just maybe, he can be given an opportunity. Maybe he can live a better life. Maybe he can. However, fate has different plans for him, as this is when he would then be pierced by multiple light spears, killing him off in an instant. Asta's eyes would widen as this is when a portal would then open up, as falling through it would be none other than Sally, but along with her was Licht. Everyone will be in shock of Licht's arrival along with Sally, as Barrow begins to tell Sally that she went against the deal, as that was not even part of the plan. But this is when Sally just shrugs, telling them that they still did a pretty poor job either way, even if they did complete it, which caused Barrow to be pissed off as he looks at his younger brother. Now, Asta at this point was staring down at Neej's body as he couldn't believe it. At this point, Neej would be there with a hopelessly sad smile on his face, as Asta just was staring at it. At this, Asta could already tell that Neej was someone who was very misguided, Alright, it wasn't the fact that he was just a bad person, it was just the fact that he was misguided at this point. He didn't really know or really had any willpower at all to resist his actions. It was just the way how he brought himself up. As Asta would stare down at Neej, he would begin to be pissed off. As this is when Licht right now, instead of focusing on Baro or Neej, he'll be focusing on Asta, more specifically his grimoire. That grimoire, you don't deserve it, Licht would say, as this would catch everyone's attention, as by this point Ghosh had already taken Marie and left, while Asta, well, he was too focusing on how Neej just died in front of him. You bastard. At this, Asta would then look directly into Licht's eyes, as his eyes were showing true darkness, something that you would not see in the actual canon for Asta. At this, Asta will look at Licht as he tells him that he will kill him, as this is when he brings out the Demon Dweller sword. At this, Licht will be looking at the swords and now once again confirms that that grimoire truly did not belong to Asta. As Asta will then charge at Licht at full speed. At this, he would jump into the air as, to Licht's surprise and everyone's surprise, Asta would make it there quite quickly, as Asta had to use his muscles at full capability as he takes a slash at Licht. However, Licht, being the fact that he has light magic and also because of the fact he knows how to fight, he would actually dodge out of the way of Asta's attack and appear behind him, before suddenly he ends up stabbing Asta directly in the back with a light spear. Asta would cough up blood as he would look down to see the generous light spear in his stomach, before suddenly he would then be impaled all over by multiple light spears, as this is when he then falls down to the ground as he slowly begins to die. You're pathetic. You really truly show that you do not deserve this grimoire, filthy human. Asta would say nothing more as by this point his body has lost strength. He can't even wince in pain anymore. He lost feeling in his entire body, as this is when he then fades to black, once again dying. So I'm pretty sure you guys are already aware about the loop. You guys already know Asta's going to return back, and the same process of the Days of End will continue on until the fights. And I'm just going to say this one. Asta would die a total of 3 more times during this arc. Now, I know some people might say like, oh, that's quite a lot, but the thing is, it was pretty simple. Noelle would try calling for backup, but again, backup takes way too long. Also try to stop Baro and Neej way early on, but at the same time, this would cause Licht to actually, hunt them down along with Sally, which ends up making him encounter Asta, which ends up making him kill Asta for the grimoire. Asta already realized that the grimoire was something that Licht wants, and at one instance, he even thought about trading away the grimoire. Maybe if he gave it away, Licht would just, resolve it all peacefully. But you guys already know Asta. Asta's not one to just give up something like that too easily. He would not give up. But after, dying 3 more times, Asta was pretty, this man was pretty tired already. At this, as we now begin with the final loop of this arc, Asta would instantly wake up. He would rush over to where Rebecca goes. He will play along with the siblings and Marie. Ghosh would arrive. Everything remains the same, all the way until nightfall. Asta, instead of being inside sleeping, he'll be up watching the night sky, and as he does, he'll begin to see snow fall. So they're here, Asta would say. As this is when we now change scenes, as we see Baro and Neej currently now walking to the village. At this, they're prepared to gather up all their children so that way they can extract the magic, but before they do, this is when suddenly Baro would then be knocked out in an instant. And soon following along with him would be Neej. They'll be both knocked out by Asta, who, after a while of just restraining them, he would interrogate them, asking them about what they were planning to do. Later on, after finding out what they were planning to do, he would tell Ghosh and Noelle, who Ghosh instantly wanted to kill the both of them, but also would tell him to stop it, as he tells him that they will take him to the Magic Knight headquarters for questioning. After that, Asta would then look up into the hills, as he could already tell what's going to happen next, as he tells Noelle to instantly call for reinforcements. And just as he does so, Asta will then walk towards the cliff area, the base where they're trying to extract the magic. Now, you're probably wondering as to why Asta would actually be going there if he knows that Licht and Sally are going to be there. It's because of the fact that, at least over there, Asta is able to control the damage way more. As in one of the loops, this being actually the final loop, Asta had actually decided to stay at the village, hoping that with Noelle along with Ghosh, she'll be to take on Licht, but in fact it ended even worse than Asta could imagine. As soon as Licht had arrived, he summoned out multiple light spirits as they pierced the villagers' homes, and this would actually end up injuring more of the villagers. Asta would try to stop him, of course, but Asta was way too slow. He was not strong enough to keep up with Licht. Ghosh would also try to attack him, and Licht at first was very reluctant on even attacking Ghosh, not wanting to hurt him. but seeing the fact that he was too much under controls of the so-called humans, he instantly knocked out Ghosh, and at that same time, he also ended up actually harming Noel as well. And after seeing all this and seeing how everything crumbles so fast, Asta would of course end up dying to Licht, who ends up taking away Asta's grimoire. So yeah, after going through that whole third loop, Asta just did not want to do that anymore, as he decided that if he was going to face him, he's going to have to take him into a more controlled area, that being the base. As Asta would soon arrive at the base, he would be there standing there casually, waiting for the arrival of Licht. As he would then begin to, wait in anticipation, this is when he hears the portal opening up, as both Licht and Sally would then make their appearance known. Now, instantly, Sally would be confused as to why Baro and Neej weren't here and why they weren't extracting the mana, with herself being disappointed in both Baro and Neej, telling them in her mind that she would make sure to experiment them properly so that way they can learn to pay for their mistakes. All the while, Licht himself would be, looking around the entire area as he was expecting, some type of magic knight to try to interfere. Now, although he was confident in Sally's skills, after the events of the royal capital, he didn't want to lose any more of his trusted soldiers. So as Licht was wondering about where exactly, any of them were, Asta would currently right now be in the midst of hiding. He would be right now in the darkness, lurking about as he'd be staring directly at Licht, analyzing him, trying to see a perfect opportunity to go in. Alright, I didn't want to resort to this, but I had to play my trump card. I have to win. At this, Asta will begin to think as he clenches his fist for a little bit as his grimoire begins to flip. Alright, hold it in. A little more, a little more. Asta will be thinking this in his head, as during the last loop that I mentioned earlier on, during that last loop, Asta had actually witnessed some changes that his body went through during that last loop. As he saw Noel get injured and he saw Ghosh practically being useless, he saw the villagers being attacked. Asta, he felt like his body urged himself to get stronger. And when he did, it's almost as if that body was forcibly pulling in the anti-magic in him, causing Asta to get anti-magic form, to the point where his anti-magic was way more dangerous, to the point where it was actually able to injure Sally at least. Licht was of course way too fast, but still, it showed something to Asta. So as Asta was gathering up as much anti-magic as he can into his body, Licht and Sally were finally done looking around the entire area. And of course Sally was upset until she would see the village and think that they could be pretty good guinea pigs at least. Plus she also wanted to test out her new magic items. Now, of course Licht would allow her to do this, as Sally along with Licht would then try to walk towards the village, trying to wreak carnage as usual. However, this is when Asta would then finally see an opportunity. Got you, Asta would say. At this, he would then release it. As Licht and Sally were now about to go to the village, this is when Licht would then suddenly be stabbed into the side of his stomach by an anti-magic arrow. Sally and Licht would be caught off guard by this, as Licht instantly getting hit by the anti-magic arrow and now it being lodged inside of him would instantly collapse down to one knee as he feels his magic draining rapidly. He'll be wondering about what was going on along with Sally until this is when suddenly they will hear Asta behind them. Asta would be there in his new form, as this was the Black Asta form except with a twist. As instead of just having that one little wing, Asta would actually have both of his wings, with both of them being way more defined. And not only that, but instead of Asta, just having a black mark across his eye, he would still have that, but he would also have this enormous black mask forming around his face. As right now, almost half of Asta's body was transformed while the other half still remained human. Asta didn't have full mastery of this form at all. In fact, he was just going into this one blindly, but still, he needed strength, and this was the best thing he can come up with. As seeing Asta, Licht would then suddenly try to form a light spear, but to his surprise, it would transform into a light dagger instead. He would try pumping more magic energy into it, but that would take up so much force to the point where he barely could even hold on or sustain it. At this, he would look at the magic arrow as he realized that was the reason for it all, as thanks to the fact that the arrow was lodged into Licht, he can't exactly control his magic properly, or he can't even regulate its strength, so pretty much that thing's continuously messing up with Licht's control and also weakening the magic. As this is when Sally would then, of course, be surprised at this, as she would then attack Asta using her sticky salamander. Asta would remember the sticky salamander well, as this is when suddenly he would then switch weapons. He removed the bow and arrow as he then switches to the Demon Dweller sword, as the transformation now transformed into that of how it looked in canon. Also, it suddenly fly over and slash directly at Sally, as thanks to the fact that he does not have exactly too much control of the form, he'll be able to one-shot her in an instant, as she'll be sent flying and crashing into the wall. Licht, now seeing the fact that Sally was taken down, will then get up, as this is when he then tries pulling out the arrow out of his stomach. It was a very gruesome sight, as he uses all as much force as he can, until finally he was able to do so. Did it hurt? Definitely. But was he now able to regulate his magic properly? Yes. Letting go of the arrow and now finally able to control his magic much more freely, Link will summon out multiple light spirits as he summons them all to attack Asta. Asta, while still wielding the Demon Dweller sword, will then begin to counteract these attacks, using everything he's got. However, just as Asta was of course slashing to these attacks, his magic begins to go... anti-magic begins to go wildly, as he begins to bounce all over the place trying to destroy the light spirits. Dang it, come on, give me more control, just for a little longer. Asta would shout in his mind, as he will be trying to regain control, and using the opportunity, Link would then shoot out multiple light spirits at Asta that would appear behind him this time. Asta will be hit by these attacks, as luckily, thanks to the fact that Link was still injured, and because of the fact that Asta, thanks to the Black Asta form, he was able to sense the attack approaching. Asta had luckily not sustained too much injuries, but he was still pretty injured. So as Licht and Asta were now currently facing off against each other, Asta would soon begin to lose control of the transformation as it begins to get disrupted. It goes too wild to the point where Asta can't even maintain it anymore. Come on, just a little more, Asta would say, as he tries to pump more and more anti-magic into him, but unfortunately for him, his body couldn't handle it. He was unfortunately too weak. As Asta will lose the transformation, he would then fall down to the ground on one knee, panting a lot. His body was tensing up. His muscles were exhausted. His body was sore. He couldn't move on. As he tries to dodge out of the way of Licht's sudden attack, as Licht, of course, he was still able to move. Using his light magic, he did have to burn the wound so he can close it. But now that it was closed, he was able to fight better off. So he would try to actually kill Asta at this very instant, now deeming Asta too much of a nuisance to continue living. So as Asta looks up at the generous light spirit coming towards him, already thinking that he was going to die again. However, right before that spirit could fully hit Asta, Yami would then appear along with Finral. Finally, after so long, Asta was actually able to stop both Licht and Sally, as thanks to Yami appearing, he would deflect the attack, telling Asta that he did a good job holding them off. Now, of course, the same fight would then happen in canon with Yami facing off against Licht, while Asta himself was currently right now tired beyond belief. His body was no longer keeping conscious. Of course, Finral tries to tell Asta to snap out of it and to come back, but Asta was too tired right now. It's fine, right? I can leave it up to him. At this, Asta would close his eyes as he falls unconscious, as just like that, the rest of the battle will continue on the same way. And after facing off against Licht and winning, that's when the rest of the Midnight Suns' big three would then be revealed, only for the captains to arrive and fight them off as well. In this one, the captains were able to successfully, rat off both Licht and the Midnight Suns' big three, as Licht swears that he will get revenge on them, along with Asta, as he focuses more intensely on him, as he ends up leaving the area. Asta, during this time, mostly spent unconscious, as by this point, Asta, with all the psychological thing he went through from dying now a total of 4 times during this entire arc, yeah, he was exhausted, bro, physically and mentally. Now, the conclusion of this arc would kick off the same way still. They find the traitor just being the captain of Purple Orcas, which they end up knocking out. And in this one after that, Julius would then assign them to the Seabed Temple in order to retrieve a stone. If there was one difference I would say about this, it was the fact that now Asta unlocked the black mode much sooner, so Asta will be trying to focus more and more on that. But as he was trying to unlock this black mode and trying to control it, also had the encounter with the demon that was hiding inside the grimoire. He would encounter Libe. However, it was not the Libe that Asta would meet earlier on. I'm not talking about the generous form that he created, no. It was the actual form of Libe, the one who looked exactly like Asta. Asta would be surprised about the anti-magic demon, and this is where I'm actually going to start explaining. For the next few arcs, I'm going to be skipping over a lot of things and just moving on to how exactly or why exactly these stories were affected, because of the fact that this point right here would be a very turning point for Asta's character. As you see, Libe would actually ask Asta to sit down and have a chat with him. Now, Asta, of course, would do so because Libe seems very responsible and everything, as Libe begins to comment on Asta's eyes, saying that Asta looks very happy. At this, Asta would nod, saying that he is getting stronger and that he's getting closer and closer to achieving his goal of becoming the Wizard King. At this, Libe will listen to this and actually chuckle before he looks into Asta's eyes fully. At this, Asta would be there as he stares at Libe, as Libe would then drop the smiling expression, telling Asta he knows he's lying. And at this, Asta begins to sweat slightly as he wonders what Libe is talking about, until Libe drops a bomb on Asta. He knows that Asta has been returning back from death. That would completely shatter Asta's entire reality right there. He thought he was the only one who remembered everything that happened, all those events that had occurred each time he died. He would grab Libe, telling and shake him, asking him how did he know, or if he was the cause of it. He was shaking Libe, asking him what was going on, but Libe would then suddenly just slap Asta's arms away before getting up, telling Asta to, to get some space. Like, bro, this is my personal bubble. Move. As he pretty much begins to explain to us the reason about what was going on. And this is where we get the explanation from Libe, from his perspective. Now you see, Lichita's curse, or that's how I say in this story. In this one, Lichita's curse, although it had affected Asta gradually, because he's the one who has been fighting out there and everything, he's the one who's been dying. This curse was not only inflicted on Asta, no. It was also inflicted on Libe. Remember, earlier on she said to protect both Libe and Asta, and that she will always be looming over the both of them to protect them. However, this brought upon many issues, as when she said those words and the curse was inflicted, little did she know by saying those words, Asta, whenever he were to feel the pain or whenever he were the one to die, Libe would also be sent into that void. And he would feel the experiences that Asta went through, the pain. And yes, although I do understand that it could be kind of confusing and everything, but it is what it is. As Asta now realized that every single thing that he'd done, where he pretty much were to just die because of the fact of his own stubbornness, Libe had to suffer through that too. And this made Asta feel exponentially guilty. As he tries to apologize to Libe would tell him that to zip it up as he does not want to hear it. As the whole point here was not to hear Asta's apology, no, the point here was the fact that both of them need to survive. He tells Asta straight up that they're not strong enough, that he is not strong enough. As Asta would be looking at him confused, trying to speak up, but Asta knew that he was not lying. They were not strong enough. With Licht, Asta legit had to tap into a form which he barely had any control of, which left him completely exhausted. In fact, he would have died again if it had not been for Yami and the rest of the captains arriving. And after realizing this, Asta would be looking down, as this is when Libe then tells Asta the main reason why he came here. And he tells Asta that they need to work together to survive. Libe did not like the idea of dying again, and he doesn't know exactly why he and Asta are like fated to the point where now whenever Asta dies, he has to die along with him. He does not know why, but all he knows is that he's stuck with this kid, and whenever something happens to this kid, something will eventually end up happening to him. And you're probably wondering why Libe didn't contact Asta sooner. It was because of the fact that Libe did not have as much control as he did before. He did not have full capacity to bring Asta in. It was only after he began to manipulate the anti-magic through Asta that he was finally able to get some type of connection to drag him into this like mindscape. So after explaining all this to Asta, this is where we will now continue on with the Seabed Temple arc, as this is where we're going to be starting to skim through some of the arcs. So sit tight on this one. So to start off with this arc, we now kick off with the Seabed Temple arc, as this arc is going to be skimmed through quite easily. The Black Bulls end up taking on the challenge, and they end up winning this one quite easily. Veto does make his appearance known, but this time they end up defeating him way easier than in canon. And you're probably wondering how or why. That's because of the boost that Asta ends up getting. That's right. Before they went on this mission, Libe and Asta had trained. And with the training and now Libe like helping out Asta, Asta's able to manipulate anti-magic way better, with Asta actually getting a pretty good grasp on it. It's able to enter Asta's body way quicker, and because of that, Asta is able to access his form much quicker. So with that, Asta is able to enter into his, black mode, but he's only able to control 25% of it. If he goes any more beyond it, it will begin to go on a time limit, and when that time limit runs out, Asta is practically useless at that point. So during the Seabed Temple arc, Veto would make his appearance known, and of course, the rest of the Black Bulls would fight. Luck and Magma would nearly die to Veto, but luckily this time Asta would arrive much sooner. he would tap into the black mode, and with a few anti-magic arrows, which were way too fast for even Veto to react to, he would actually begin to feel his magic get shut down. And of course, seeing that Veto's magic was beginning to get shut down, Asta would transform into the different form, wielding the Demon Slayer sword, as this is where Asta actually also begins to master or try to learn how to, manipulate the anti-magic even better. With the help of Libe, he's actually able to increase the size of the Demon Slayer sword, so it only makes it slightly bigger, not as big as he made it during the Elf Reincarnation arc, but at least now he's able to learn that he can manipulate the size of it to make it grow larger. So with that, Asta is able to defeat Veto, along with the help with the rest of the Black Bulls, as even though this Asta is way stronger than he was in canon during this point, that doesn't mean he's going to be able to one-shot Veto with ease. So yes, Veto is beaten, and they still take the Magic Stone, as after that, they can now move on to the next arc, this being the Witch's Forest arc. The Black Bulls, now having just completed their mission, had reported back to the Wizard King, and in this one, Asta does not get his arms injured, so they don't need to treat it at all. An attack from the Demon Kingdom also ends up happening still, but like I said, just like in canon, they end up taking care of this one way easier, with Asta, thanks to the fact he isn't injured, able to help out much more. Another thing is that during this arc, they still go to the Witch's Forest. The reason for this one was because of the fact they found out that the Queen of Witches has the other Magic Stone, so Wizard King Julius would then tell the Black Bulls to do it, with Asta being assigned with Vanessa and Noelle and Finral. They will soon arrive at the Witch's Forest, to which this arc is going to play out pretty similar to in canon, as the Midnight Sun will still attack along with the Demon Kingdom, but this time, the Black Bulls will still stop it like in canon. Now, thanks to this what if, of course, Asta, I'm just going to say it, in this arc he doesn't die too, mostly due to the fact that during the time back, Asta, again, since Libe is cooperating, and thanks to the fact that Asta is way more insightful, now realizing that, hey, if he dies, Libe would die as well, and realizing that how his actions can also end up affecting others as well. Now realizing that he's not the only one who's affected by his ability now. So this makes Asta train even harder, trying to master anti-magic even further, and also causing him to increase his weaponry. Like, this man is now having a full-on weapon shop inside his grimoire. He'll be buying different things, like he bought an entire chain so he can attach it to certain items. He bought an axe just in case. Like, Asta is over here filling up his grimoire with different types of weapons. Now, of course, most of the funding will still be going to the... Sorry, I'm getting lost in thought right now. He will send it mostly to the orphanage, of course, but whenever he does have a little bit of money left, he will mostly spend it trying to gather and buy weapons. Due to this, Asta is now having way more options than he had in the beginning of the series. So yes, Asta has different types of weapons for different types of situations. And in this one, the fight against Fauna, as Asta would actually face off against her, Asta would be able to defeat Fauna much more easy, this time not even getting any real injuries. Of course, he does feel the heat and the intense heat from fighting her. He still ends up beating her up quite easily, as thanks to his body getting pushed to the limit, and thanks to having way more control over anti-magic, Asta is able to defeat Fauna with ease, and is able to take her down, which would eventually allowing her and Mars to have a reunion. And of course, the same shtick would happen with Ladros, as he attempts to actually kill Mars because he's still bad and everything, and doesn't see anything wrong with the system, but also would defeat him with ease. Actually, not even entering into his black mode to defeat him. He actually just one-shots him with his arrow skills, as now Asta is actually full-on mastery with bow and arrow, able to actually shoot it from extremely long distances. So yeah, Ladros will be defeated quite easily with Asta, and I'm just gonna say it in this one. Yeah, in this one, Asta actually just straight up just kills him. This will actually be one of the changes that you will see in Asta's character. In this one, Asta would be way more willing to kill people in this one. Now, it's not like Asta just likes doing it. It's not like he's going to be like, oh, I'm going to do it, I'm going to enjoy it. No, he's not like that. But it's more on the fact that if Asta has to do it, or he sees that, hey, this person's about to do something bad, and I have an ability to stop him by ending his life, then I'm just going to have to do it. That's just how he is. He's not going to sit here and just try to talk no jutsu this guy. He's not Naruto, dude. He's not going to sit here and be inspirational either. He's already seen, this man has already died multiple times. He already seen how people truly are sometimes. So Asta already knows that whenever he gets an opportunity to go for the kill, he has to go for it. Or else, what if he doesn't? What if that person ends up killing him? What if that person ends up causing more damage later on? Asta does not want to take that chance. You may call it unfair, you may call it conflicting with Asta's character, but at the end of the day, in this what if, it's going to go as it is. So eventually, moving on from the story, we will see the Witch's Force arc conclude the very same way, with Vanessa saving her friends and forcing her to unlock the Cat of Fate or String of Fate. Sorry if I pronounced it wrong. As in this one, the Queen of Witches, since she didn't have control over Asta's body, she would instead just, end up capturing everyone and actually summoning out multiple blood spears, to which Vanessa would activate her magic to save everyone. Now, Asta in this one would, of course, be able to break out of this one, as he's actually got control over his anti-magic and everything. But he has full faith in Vanessa, so he doesn't do anything, which allows her to actually reach her full potential. And moving on from this arc, we would later on see that they got the magic stone from the Queen of Witches herself. And after that, the Black Bulls would continue on as they were now entering into Arc 7, the Royal Knights arc. And this one, I'm going to say a few months had passed before this arc had begun. And during this time, Asta was now able to access now 50% of his Black Asta mode. And he would also begin to now add a few more weapons into his, grimoire, allowing him to have way more control as well. Now at this point, Asta actually is able to now ride on his, Demon Slayer sword like a board, as this would actually help Asta travel to other missions way quicker. Which another thing was the fact that Asta was taking a lot of missions for the Black Bulls in this one. In this story, as a way to test out his strength, Asta can't just leave it up to assumptions. Like he can't just guess like, oh, I trained for this long, so that must mean I'm this strong. No, Asta would actually go on missions by himself if he has to, taking on different types of dungeons and different types of threats all by himself, testing his strength and pushing it further and further. Because of this one, Asta has way more battle experience than he had in canon as well. So yeah, this Asta was truly making his way through the rankings and fast. And as we now turn to when it was finally time for the festival, Asta would be forced by Yami to take a break from missions, as he's been going on it like crazy. So Yami would tell Asta to take a break and for him to relax, to which Asta would do so. Most of it will play out the same in this one. I'm not really changing much of this since it doesn't really contribute much to Asta's character, besides him getting a few bonds and getting closer with Noelle. Other than that, Asta mostly passes through this with ease until finally the awards ceremony, where in this one, instead of the Black Bulls getting second place, they'll get first. This will be thanks to Asta in this timeline. Thanks to the fact of Asta testing out his abilities and just taking on those missions, he had unknowingly given the Black Bulls multiple stars, and because of this, they made it to number 1. And this will cause everyone to be in shock of the Black Bulls being in number 1, with many people protesting at the fact that they were. But Julius was the Wizard King for a reason, so after calming down everyone, he explained to them that there was no false in his words, as he explains that the Black Bulls have seemed to lit a fire up this year, as they were doing a lot of missions. And more precisely, one peculiar member of the Black Bulls who had just recently joined has been climbing up the ranks rapidly, as he would then call out for Asta. Asta would soon arrive there just like in canon, surprising everyone, as this boy, who was looking extremely young, was able to do so much, with a lot of people in the Clover Kingdom actually recognizing Asta. Thanks to the fact that Asta has been doing way more missions than he does in canon, Asta has notably gained a lot of popularity, and due to that, a lot of people actually know who Asta is, as many people begin to cheer for him. Asta will be there soaking up everything, as he can't believe that he actually made it here. As Liebe would tell Asta not to think too highly of himself, after all, he himself had also been helping out Asta. To which Asta would know. And after that, the rest of the announcement ceremonies would continue on the same, with the Golden Dawn being in second place, with Yuno arriving, and the rest of the rankings continue on just like they did in canon. Now, Yuno and Asta would share this bro moment, as they were actually really happy to be here, really happy that things made it this far, until this is when one of the matching knights would then comment on how both of them were commoners. This will cause them to lose their trust in them quite quickly, but Yuno and Asta will then demonstrate their power, as Yuno would then form a generous wind arrow directly towards Asta, so powerful that it was actually sending people in the front of the crowd flying. But Asta himself, he would do something even more shocking, as instead of simply deflecting it, he would actually do something even more shocking. As soon as Yuno would fire off the attack, this is when Asta would actually bring out the Demon Dweller sword, as he points it directly at the attack, and to the shock of everyone, the attack gets absorbed into the sword. Not bad, Yuno, but I can do better, Asta would say. As in when suddenly he then sends out a straight-on slash from the sword, causing a ginormous burst of wind magic to shoot out from it, and causing it to actually slice up the clouds up in the sky. Everyone would be in shock at the display until they suddenly end up cheering for Asta and Yuno, with Yuno actually being surprised of how Asta deflected the attack. What You know what? It's pointless trying to figure out Asta. He's just gonna get stronger and stronger, which means I gotta work faster. I'm not gonna be left behind. With those words now ringing in Yuno's head, we can now turn to the rest of this arc, where I'm gonna keep it simple. Most of this arc doesn't change, all the way until the very battles themselves. For the battles themselves, Asta, I'm just gonna say this, he just beats them all much faster in this one. Since now that Asta has, well, way more control over his anti-magic, Asta is able to defeat them with more ease and prestige. But this time, instead of like going all out, Asta is actually now conserving his energy way more, as he does not need to go enter his black form just to stand a fighting chance against the others. So yes, Asta is able to annihilate them, and honestly, Yuno as well as many others will actually be impressed by Asta's skill, as they still sense not even a single drop of mana from Asta, yet this man is doing some incredible things. Like, he's legit beating down on these guys with ease. As these events will continue on all the way into the very finals, in the finals, Asta would actually be participating in it, as unlike in canon where he lost, well, no, he didn't lose to Longris, but he did end in a draw with him. But in this one, Asta is way stronger, so yeah, he just stomps Longris's team with ease in this one. Especially way faster since he was a little bit pissed. Heck, he wasn't even a little bit. He was a lot pissed off since Longris tried to kill Finral, so yeah. Moving on. Sorry, I ate a lot of food. Either way, Asta now is at the finals facing off against Yuno. And before the fight even begins, Asta begins to give the team a strategy, as that's what Asta's been doing throughout most of the matches. I know I've been explaining things like Asta is just running in there defeating all the teams, but Asta's actually strategizing. His mind is way more open, and thanks to his battle IQ going like exponentially high, Asta is pretty good when it comes to strategy, as he tells his team exactly what to do, where to go, already beginning to consider what the other teams is, especially since he already knows about what Noel's abilities are. So he pretty much tells them everything they should know, as well as the fact he tells Zora to use this opportunity to set traps around the entire area, as if they're going to try to get to the stone, they might as well sweat for it, or work for it, sorry. So of course, Zora and Mimosa understand this as they nod their head, while Asta would face off against Yuno. Yuno would instantly approach Asta as the fight between the two would then begin, while Asta pulling out the Demon Dweller sword for speed. At this, he would attack Yuno, as Yuno would dodge out the way of the slashes, as he and Asta get into combat. And already starting off the fight, Asta would already be giving Yuno a hard time, as in this one, Asta was moving way quicker, as thanks to the training that Asta has gone through, Asta's muscles have now truly been suited for combat, as Asta has been bouncing off the rocky terrain, gaining boost of speed gradually, with Yuno having a hard time to keep up with Asta, or just simply dodge out of the way of the attacks. He's getting faster, Yuno would say, as he was so confused as to why Asta was getting faster, as the way Asta was moving, it was because of the fact of his training as well as the control over anti-magic, which allows him to pretty much move similar to that of the Rokushiki back in the world of One Piece. Or if you want to think of Sonic like how he is in One Punch Man, where he begins to like blitz all over the place when facing off against Saitama. Yeah, that's how Asta is moving, but he's like gradually getting faster each time. Asta, all the while doing so, was analyzing every bit of movement, using all his experience that he gains from fighting different opponents, from dying those few times, and he was using everything he can during this fight. He was not gonna lose. So with that, Yuno tries converging a generous burst of wind towards Asta, trying to slow him down. But instead of running away or blocking it, Asta would instead absorb the attack using the Demon Dweller sword. Sorry, Yuno, you're going to have to try way better than that. As Asta would swing down with the Demon Dweller sword, it would send back the wind attack, but this time with double the speed and double the power, as Yuno has no chance but to form a wind barrier to block the attack. And even when he did that, he would still push back a lot of feet away. As he would be slightly dazed from the attack, he would recollect himself as he looked for Asta, only to see that Asta was nowhere near. But where did he? At this, Yuno would then be in shock as he fell to it at the very last instance. Moving his eyes to the side, he would see Asta was already right next to him, and right now Asta had an anti-magic infused dagger as it cut Yuno's cheek. Yuno's eyes would widen as he instantly uses the spirit dance to move away from Asta as quickly as possible, while Asta himself just casually lands down on the ground, with him looking at Yuno's cheek with a smile. Good. I got you, Yuno. Yuno would be in shock at the fact that Asta was be able to hit him so soon, as he for sure knew that Asta was going to do some damage, but not this quick. As he looks at Asta for a while, he then suddenly shakes out of it as he smirks. Alright, Asta. Yeah, mate, you got the first wound in, but this time I'm going serious. It's time for us to go all out, Asta. Asta will look at the dagger in her hand for a few seconds before he sighs, telling Yuno that he agrees, as this is when Asta and Yuno then begin to charge up, finally deciding to give it all they got. With Asta and Yuno staring at each other, Asta will then suddenly pull out the demon dweller sword once again from the grimoire, but this time he also attached a chain to it. As it wrapped around Asta's arm, Asta would also bring out a shield as well, as Asta would then enter into his black form. At this, we will see the detailed wings sprout from Asta's back, as it looks similar to how it looked in canon, except way more detailed, the wing on Asta's back being way more defined, and overall also just looking like extremely cool in this one, as he stares directly at Yuno. Are you ready? Yuno himself would actually be surprised that Asta was using a shield, as the way Asta fights, you would never expect him to be the type of guy to use a shield, but he nods his head as he enters into his spirit form. With both of them now activating their alternative transformations, they then rush at each other at full speed. Yuno was in generous gust of wind at Asta, enough to actually push him back, or at least that was how it's supposed to be, until this when Asta would then slightly put the shield in front of him. And as soon as it does, Yuno would be in shock, as Asta with the shield was able to completely, instantly burst through the attack with ease. What? Yuno would shout, as this is when Asta would then appear in front of Yuno, as with an anti-magic slash, he's able to cut Yuno down, causing him to be sent flying and crashing into a nearby hill. Gotcha, Yuno, Asta would shout. Well, Yuno himself was in shock, as this is when Asta would then get once again into a stance. He put the shield in front of the sword, as Asta points at Yuno directly with his sword. Yuno will be confused about this position until Asta would then rush towards him at amazing speed again. No, not again, Yuno would shout, as this is when he then brings out a ginormous burst of wind again, and this time shooting out a full-on tornado at Asta, who Asta himself wasn't at all affected. In fact, Asta would actually change technique slightly, as now the shield was completely in front of Asta, but the Demon Dweller Sword was slowly absorbing the magic that was behind Asta. Due to this, Yuno would be in shock, as Asta would actually burst through the tornado unharmed, and not only that, but he also had another charged attack. I got you, Yuno. At this, Asta would slice down again, hoping to get another hit into Yuno, but Yuno this time using the Spirit Dance was able to dodge out the way. However, the damage from Asta's attack was still enough to destroy the mountain area that Yuno was on. What's going on here? I can't stop him, Yuno would think, as he will be sending out multiple ginormous tornadoes at Asta, screaming out his battle cry as he tries to stop him. However, it was pointless. Asta was moving around, guiding through the ginormous wind, almost like a bird, honestly, as he was cutting them about with no hesitation at all. Asta himself was enjoying this time, as he thanked Yuno for giving him a fun fight. It's been a while since I've been like this, Yuno. It's been a while since I've been able to fight without actually worrying about myself dying, without worrying that something might happen to me. I thank you for this, Yuno. As in Asta's mind, it's been a while since Asta's been able to fight like this, to fight without thinking that, hey, he will eventually die if he loses this fight. So he thanked Yuno so much for this one, as with this, Asta decided to give Yuno a proper conclusion to this fight. Not only that, but it also was a way to show Yuno that he finally has beaten him. As Yuno would suddenly gather up as much wind as he can, compressing it, he will then try using the Spirit Storm. He will shoot off the Spirit Storm directly in front of Asta, as another beam would then shoot out from the back of Asta as well. Both the attacks were about to slam into Asta at once, while Asta himself was still in the same position. I see. So you decided to go with two of these things, huh? Not bad, Yuno. Not bad at all. However, as Asta would say this, Asta would then suddenly switch from using a spear to another shield, as he would then block both of the Spirit Storms. Yuno would watch the attack, thinking that it actually landed on Asta, while Asta himself had to clench his muscles as he was holding in the attack as much as he can. Yeah, come on, I can do it, Asta would think, as he pushes himself even further, as just as the attack was finally letting up, Yuno would think that he won, but unfortunately, fate had other plans. As the mist begins to clear, he would see Asta now holding both of the shields up, as they would then suddenly fall back into the grimoire, while also turning to Yuno, thanking him for giving this opportunity, thanking him for allowing him to fight like this, and thanking him for giving it all he's got. As this is where Asta would then suddenly end up using the very first weapon he ever gotten from the grimoire. As this is when the pages would then flip back to the first page, as we see the Demon Slayer sword appear in Asta's hand. Seeing this would then try to prepare another attack, not willing to give up just yet, but already it was over. Asta would instantly increase the size of the Demon Slayer sword as it reaches to the heights of it that it had during the Elf Reincarnation arc. As would be in shock, but not only everyone would be in shock as the ginormous amount of anti-magic energy was so ginormous to the point where even Asta himself was struggling to keep it under control. But now finally unlocking this and actually wielding it, Asta would look at thanking him for the fight as he would then swing down. As himself would try shooting off a ginormous wind blast trying to counter it, but it would be cut through in an instant. As would be hit by the ginormous slash, getting sent flying and crashing down into the ground, with him getting immediately knocked unconscious. And this attack was so devastating, so reckoning, that it actually destroyed the very crystal of Yuno's team, with Asta's team being declared the winner. So after this, would be taken into recovery as that last attack definitely knocked him out, as Asta himself would feel bad about, going all out like that for the final attack, but at the same time, he at least held back enough to the point where was not going to die. But still, also was very glad to see that he finally had surpassed and honestly, he was excited to see how things are going to turn out in the future. But for right now, Liebe would actually remind Asta that they still are not off the hook yet. After all, they formed the Royal Magic Knight squad so that way they can take care of the Eye of the Midnight Sun. And just thinking of them, Asta already knew that those guys were definitely coming back with a vengeance. So with that, Asta would then double down on his training, pushing himself even further, as Asta would then prepare for the next battle. As the rest of this arc will play out, the ones who end up passing would pass, with the ones failing they would still fail. And after that, they would then tell them that they were going to storm the HQ. They tell them exactly where they found it and how exactly they're going to do it. They will form the teams, and just like that, the Royal Magic Knight squads were formed, as they then storm into the base. At that same instance, though, we will also have the same fight with Julius versus Licht, or as we know, Patri, which, of course, the Wizard King Julius dies, with Patri pulling off not gonna lie to you, a bitch boy move, as he legit tried to murk the entire kingdom, but Julius being Julius and also being the Wizard King, he had to save them all, which allowed Patri to gain the opening and kill him. So yeah, that's a big bummer and everything. Luckily he's still alive, as we find out later on, but still, the way that they took this guy out the arc was just so disappointing, dude. This man was truly going in on it, dude. This man was going crazy. But unfortunately, as you already know, he was of course cutting off because of the fact that he was too OP. So yeah, it's a pretty dang shame that we didn't get to see his full capabilities. But hey, let's not be too upset. Let's continue on with the rest of this arc. Which I'm just going to say this arc does not really change much at all. Asta in this one just helping out way more, as eventually it was finally time for the Elf Reincarnation arc. As this is where certain magic knights and also certain villagers would then begin to gain a certain glow, as this is where the elves would then begin to rise. The 8th arc. This arc will kick off just like it does in canon, as we now turn back to the Magic Knights. Mereoleona was in the midst of fighting Raya until finally Raya himself was smiling as he sees that the ritual has finally been completed. They have now collected all the magic stones, and with that they are now able to bring back and resurrect all the elves, as this way they can now initiate their revenge. During this time, Mereoleona would be still fighting Raya, giving it all she got, until eventually this is when multiple, elf transformed magic knights would then arrive, as this is when they would then turn to each other before hugging off with each other, pretty much enjoying their little reunion. Of course, Mereoleona, seeing this, would then ask them what was going on, but they just respond to her, telling her to shut up, as she's nothing more but a filthy human. Asta could already feel like the magic energy. Well, not even the magic energy. He can just feel the pressure that was radiating off of them, going multiple times stronger. As by this point, Asta has already mastered Ki. So already understanding this, Asta could already feel a sweat drop beginning to fall behind him as he asks Liebe to prepare himself, as he gathers as much anti-magic as he possibly can right now. If I can survive this, then maybe. As Asta begins to try to calculate a way out of this. This is when Mereoleona would just jump in there like a wild animal. And just like that, we'll see the ultimate fight with Mereoleona against the 5 of them, with Mereoleona unfortunately losing in this one, as she does in canon. To which, seeing that she was now unconscious, the elves would then try to finish her off with a combined attack. However, in this timeline, Asta would then appear in front of her as he brings out the 2 shields from his grimoire as he uses it to block the attack. Now this will cause Asta's muscles to tense up, as he had to legit, like, this was like even hurting him, as he's never been facing off against this much power until right now. However, luckily he's able to block the attack, as he tells Zora for them to make a getaway for it. As Raya, seeing Asta now in the move and already understanding his power and the grimoire that he has, tells Asta to return. However, Asta just sticks his tongue out at all of them, being a little bit childish, which gets all the elves to be pissed off as they try to attack him, with Asta deflecting the attack and making the escape. Luckily, this time they do end up making the escape though, as Zora, Asta, and Merliona end up finding a way to get out of there as quickly as possible, with Zora acting his traps to stop the elves from getting there any quicker. However, right as they were trying to escape though, as Asta was carrying Merliona on his back, this is when suddenly a portal would then open up underneath Asta as he was about to fall right through it. Seeing this, Asta activates his quick instincts as he throws Merliona towards Zora, telling him to get away from here as quickly as possible as he will handle the rest. So with that, Asta would eventually arrive at the room where Yuno, Klaus, and the other guy is there, along with Mimosa, as Mimosa was being captured while Yuno was still in the midst of his transformation, or at least that's what they thought. As Asta would arrive, he could instantly feel the boost in pressure that all of these guys had, as the only one who was like normal so far was Mimosa, who was looking at Asta with worried. Asta, of course, being Asta, he will send her a smile, telling her to, not worry, as he will take care of it from here, causing Mimosa to blush as he begins to take care of the situation. Activating the form, Asta begins to release a pressure, which this pressure was enough to actually snap Yuno out of it, as he himself will also begin to enter his transformation. As the both brothers would, power up to their fullest transformations, they'll rush at both Klaus and Haman, which I'm just finding out his name right now, as this time they absolutely destroy the two of them with ease, not even a single scratch upon them. As now that they have finally defeated the other elves, Asta would then begin to pick up on a signature, as this is when Levi would actually point out something to Asta. As he tells Asta that there was something similar to his power all the way over there, as Asta would then look all the way at the other end of the room to see another blade. Similar to the Demon Dweller sword, it was the Demon Destroyer sword. At this, Asta would begin to approach it, but this is when Licht would then make his appearance, the real one. At this, seeing Licht, Raya would be there in excitement, happy to see Licht, only to see that he wasn't fully transformed. And just like in canon, Asta and Yuno would then power up to their most powerful forms as they face off against Licht. Now, this battle would go actually very interesting, as in this one, Asta and Yuno are actually doing a pretty good job when going up against him. Asta actually being able to keep up with Yuno, if not surpassing him, while also keeping, Licht at bay. So as the fight were to continue on, and as we're reaching the climax, this is where the conclusion of this fight would continue, and the conclusion for this one would actually be the fact that, Licht in this one will lose to Asta and Yuno. Now I know this might be a little bit of a stretch, but hear me out. And last time Licht had the Demon Dweller sword, and not only that, but he mostly used that to truly dish out powerful attacks. That's how he was able to kick Asta and Yuno away from the area. But since Asta is actually like way stronger in this one, and is actually like helping out Yuno with Yuno supporting Asta as well, the both brothers like working together, this actually allowed them an opportunity to actually beat this weaker version of Licht. Now, if Licht had been at full power, they would lose. They will lose. But this time, since Licht wasn't at full power, they were actually able to beat him, as seeing Licht get beaten would shock Riot to the point where he activates his spatial magic as he sends Asta and Yuno and Mimosa to a portal as he gets them out of the base of the Midnight Sun and many distances away from them. And while doing so, he rushed over to Licht as he instantly tries to check up on him. And while this was happening, we also turn our attention to Asta and Yuno, who right now they realize that they were completely fine, as they will do the same thing that they do in canon. They end up eventually meeting up with the rest of the Magic Knights, begin to discuss about their next plan of action, with Nozel pretty much telling them that they're going to return back to Clover Kingdom to take care of the mess over there. Now Asta and Yuno would see their very own village under attack, so they'll instantly go off over there to protect it, while the rest of them decides to head off, alone to the Clover Kingdom, so that they can protect things over there. Sorry if I'm stuttering a lot, guys. I'm pretty tired, so yeah. But moving on. Asta and Yuno would soon arrive at the village, and they instantly deflect the attack that was approaching Nate from the village, as Sister Lily would be watching the two with a just flabbergasted expression, happy to see that they were both in front of her. Asta and Yuno would instantly see the chaos that was happening, which, by the way, just to let you know, in this timeline, Asta does not have the Destroyer sword right now. So yeah, Lick still has that. So Asta, since he doesn't have it right now, this is causing some trouble. But I do believe Asta will be able to find a solution to this one, as actually since he has more control over his anti-magic, Asta will be able to completely disrupt and destroy the mana that was currently infecting the chief of the village as well as the other villagers. Unfortunately, the ones who are already dead could not be cured by Asta, which was unfortunate. But hey, at least Asta was able to save the ones that were still alive. And as for the guy who's under the control of the elves, we'll be able to take care of him alone since this guy wasn't really much of a big issue. As with that, the rest of the story can now continue on with now Yuno and Asta deciding to split paths so that way they can cover more ground. So after that, nothing really changes much else from here on, as Asta still ends up gathering the rest of the Black Bulls. They still end up beginning to rescue people and form a group. After that, they soon arrive at the capital to defend it. All that stuff remains the same, except this is where Asta would then experience another death. You see, in this story, as part of the Black Bulls was transferred over to Dorothy's pocket dimension, they will actually all die in this timeline, mostly due to the fact that Sally wasn't there to bust them out, as she was the only one really intelligent enough to figure out that whatever Dorothy sees, then she'll be able to recreate in her pocket dimension. So due to that, the Black Bulls end up dying in this one, sadly. Even with the help of Vanessa's magic, it still wasn't enough. And in the main timeline, Asta would die in this one, as right now Asta had been overexerting himself, fighting off against Licht, having to face off against the other reincarnated elves. Asta has been pretty exhausted in this one. So as Asta was currently right now fighting against Ghost, trying to snap him out of it, Asta would do so luckily, but at the same time he would have to play a sacrifice, as one of Ghost's last few beams had actually connected to Asta, hitting him directly into the side of his stomach, causing him to have a gaping hole on the side of his stomach. Asta would try to snap out of it as he begins to feel the effects of Return by Death kick in. The soundtrack begins to play as he hears the multiple whispers of someone saying they love him. "Dang it, Asta! We messed up again!" Liebe would say as he shouts at Asta for this, as him and Asta begin to close their eyes, now feeling the cold dead hand, the familiar feeling all over again, as they will then snap back. Asta and Liebe would be back into the very beginning of the day once again, just as they stormed the Midnight Sun's base. Asta and Liebe would be there in shock, as Liebe would begin to curse out, saying the fact of how they lost, as he tells Asta that he needs to keep more in mind about everything. At this, however, Asta would agree at this, as he tells him that they won't be making the same mistake again, as she prepares for the next following battles. So the rest of the battles will play out exactly like they did before in the previous timeline, all the way until the very end with Licht, with Riot about to send them off, but this time Asta ends up taking the Destroyer Sword along with him. This leaves Licht without any weapon at all, which is going to lead to a few complications later on, but we'll turn to that later. Licht as well as Riot will be there as they were now heading off to the Clover Kingdom, as the rest of the events will continue on now exactly like in canon, all the way until eventually Asta would arrive back at the capital with the Black Bulls about to be captured by Dorothy. "No, not this time," Asta would say. As the Black Bulls are about to be captured by Dorothy's magic, Asta would actually shove all of them away. He moves them off as he will be the only one absorbed into this cloud, while the rest of the Black Bulls stay there in shock. "It's fine. You guys go on a lot without me. I'll be safe." At this, they will all look at Asta in shock as he'll be absorbed into the cloud, with the rest of the Black Bulls staying behind to face off against Ghost and snap him out of it. Now, some of you might be wondering why Asta would do this, and the reason for this one is pretty simple. With more of the Black Bulls over there, they'll be able to handle Ghost much more easily, while Asta in here, he can deal with anything they faced off against, since he's the only one who has pretty much a counter to this type of magic. As Asta would be there in Dorothy's domain, she would actually be surprised Asta was here, but already understanding that Asta was actually one of the very few that she needs to look out for, as she's heard of Asta. She's legit heard of him from the other elves, or at least the ones who faced off against him. And seeing them here, this is when Dorothy would then begin to create multiple constructs, as she tells Asta that she won't be escaping. This will lead to a very cool battle against Dorothy versus Asta, which would be a very cool battle. As for who would win this battle, that one would actually be very confusing for me on this one, mostly due to the fact that while Dorothy has a generous pocket dimension and everything, Asta has anti-magic. But at the same time, could Asta anti-magic at this point really counter against Dorothy? So, sum it all up in this one, Asta throughout most of the fight would actually be losing to Dorothy. Sure, he's able to defeat most of the whatever she summons out, as he's able to cut it up with his anti-magic. But at the end of it, he still is unable to do actual real damage to her. So as Asta wonders what exactly his next move is, this is when Libe then tells Asta about a solution. As this is when he tells Asta to go full on 100%. Now Asta would already know that if he were to activate this at this point, he'll be pretty much put down for most of the fights after that, and he will be taking a while to recover, but this was the only way for him to truly stop Dorothy in this domain at least. As Asta and Libe would gather as much anti-magic as they can, Libe transferring it towards Asta, with Asta absorbing it all. At this, Asta and Libe were accessing a new form, as this one suddenly multiple wings would then sprout out Asta's back, as he'll be covered in multiple armors that were made of anti-magic. At this, it was only for a split instance that this form was achieved, but just the mere presence of the form was enough to completely blow away Dorothy out of her domain, shattering it completely, as Asta and Libe were shot at full power as they destroyed the entire pocket dimension, freeing themselves from it. Dorothy herself will be knocked out of the fight as she saw the transformation, and even though it was only a glimpse of it, she can't help but gasp at its power, as she herself was instantly knocked out of her elf reincarnation, setting the real Dorothy free. As this is where we now turn back to, what's happening in the actual reality. As over there, the Black Bulls had finally restrained Ghosh. It did take a lot of teamwork and a lot of effort, all of them put together, but they were finally able to do it. As right now, they were waiting for Asta's return, having full faith that he would. And what do you know? He did come back, appearing out of the dimension as multiple amount of darkness and pink began to swirl around before poofing out Asta and Dorothy. Asta would see Ghosh over there, as this is when he then tossed toward the Destroyer Blade. The Destroyer Blade was only near right beside Ghosh and Marie, as Marie was also captured in this one. But as the blade does land between the both of them, it ends up erasing the effects of the elf reincarnation spell, freeing Ghosh and Marie, and allowing the reincarnations to finally rest in peace. With this finally being done with, the Black Bulls are now finally all reunited, as we see Finro, Noel, and Zora all eventually end up meeting up with the rest of the Black Bulls, including Yami also meeting up with them. At the same time, we will see Mereoleona, Fuegoleon, and pretty much everyone else also appear, as now that the entire Magic Knight squad was here, things were ready to go. Or at least that's what you would think. Since Asta is currently right now unconscious because of the fact he accesses that new form, Asta would currently right now be kind of out of commission for the rest of the fights for right now. As this is when the Shadow Palace would then appear above the Clover Kingdom, as seeing that this was the last destination, this is when the Magic Knight captains would then form out the best possible squads to go inside. Now originally Asta was supposed to go along with them, since his anti-magic has shown itself to be extremely useful, and since the fact that Asta has shown himself to be a very competent warrior. But unfortunately, since the fact that Asta is right now out of commission, there's unfortunately nothing for him to do. So with this, Asta would be there laying unconscious, as the rest of the Magic Knight captains, as well as the original squad from last time, would then go inside, as they will all begin to go inside and fight their well-destinated battles. So leading up to the designated battles, each one of them will be facing off against their suggested pair, as they will face off against their opponents, with them having a much harder time in this one, but they were still handling it well gradually. At that same instance, Yuno would actually rush in there, as he had arrived bringing a bunch of reinforcements to continue on with the fight, as he would enter into the Shadow Palace. However, as he does, he will see Asta unconscious, but he could already tell that Asta was not done yet. Heck, not by a long shot. So waiting for Asta's arrival, Yuno says that he won't lose like he did last time, as he would say this mentally, with him and the Elf Spirit now entering inside, as Yuno decides to go all out for the next upcoming battles. Asta himself was actually still in his mindscape, as right now him and Libe were both concentrating, gathering as much mana, well anti-magic as they can, into their bodies, as Asta was trying his hardest to hold it in. Asta, are you 100% sure about this? I'm not even sure about this. At this, Asta will look up at Libe with a smile. Don't worry, alright? Just enough power to at least last, alright? 30 minutes tops, alright? After that, I'm going to be unconscious for like at least multiple days. Heck, maybe 2 weeks maybe. Asta was not going to lie to you. The amount of anti-magic he was gathering up, and now the fact that his body was exhausted throughout all the events from today, he was going to be put out of commission for a while now. Especially since what he was attempting to do. Libe will look at Asta as if he was an idiot, but he'd trust Asta. After all, if he dies, well, Libe dies. So at the end of the day, he already knows that Asta's not going to necessarily put him in danger. After all, Asta, the only reason why he's not been dying as much in the story as he did earlier in the beginning is because he found out that Libe is also affected by it. So Libby put his trust into Asta, already knowing that Asta wouldn't do something like that unless there was really no other choice. As Asta already can tell that from the way he is currently, if he were to wake up right now, he'll be extremely limited. To the point where at best he'll be able to swing a few slashes, take down a few reincarnated elves, but the big bad himself, Asta would not stand a chance at, especially as he is right now. In fact, he'll be killed rather easily. So with that, and not making sure that he doesn't die this time, Asta would be gathering as much anti-magic as he can. As this is when Libby would then begin to start a countdown, saying that they were almost up to the full capacity. At this, we the viewers would then see the countdown then begin, as we turn to the first fight, this being Noelle versus Fauna, as she was having a pretty hard time against her in her Valkyrie armor, but was still holding off, as she already knew that one way or another this fight was going to be over with. As this is when an image of a certain boy pops into her mind, causing her to blush, but also causing her to gain a slightly more power up, already knowing that he would not be put down at all. 5. At this, we will now turn to the next one as we see Merliona and Fuegoleon as they land the finishing blow on their respective opponents, as their opponents would hit the ground, actually in shock by the power of these two. 4. We will see Nozel as he himself would be currently right now fighting against the enemy, as he was not going to give up for the glory of the Clover Kingdom and for his family, as he imagines the rest of his family, including one person. As right behind Noelle, there will be his mother, as he himself begins to put more power into this one. 3. At this, we will see looking up as somehow, some way, Yami as well as Charlotte had also entered into the palace, which I forgot to mention, as while they were inside, they were currently taking on the big bad, this being the current demon. And right now, things were not looking too good for him, as Licht himself was also having a hard time, since he was avoiding most of the attacks. 2. At this, we will see Licht begins to concentrate as, in a different direction, we will see the Wizard King, the very first Wizard King, finally end up forming, as this is when he then transfers all the way over there. As he rushes all the way over there, this is when the countdown would finally meet its mark. 1. At this, Asta would then open his eyes as he bursts out with a generous amount of anti-magic. All the reincarnated elves that were still fighting at this very instant would then suddenly end up getting knocked out and completely shut down, as their spell would be lifted up. Anyone who was near Asta, they'll have their magic completely erased, as their spells were completely evaporated. And even those who were a long distance away from him felt their magic weaken just as he had awoken. Finally, I was getting tired of being stuck unconscious for such a long time, Asta would say, as he himself would be laughing slightly, while Libe would be exhausted. He had transferred over as much anti-magic as he possibly could control into Asta, giving Asta this brand new form, but at the same time it was exhausting him. Asta, you better make good use with this one, you gosh dang bastard. I'm tired, you handle it for now. You get 30 minutes, alright? After that, you're through, Libe would say as he collapses down, leaving everything up to Asta. Asta himself would have trouble controlling the anti-magic, as it legit was starting to get wild at any second, but Asta held it in. I got it. Don't worry. I'll take things from here. As with that, Asta would then disappear into the Shadow Palace in a red and black flash, while everyone else would watch in shock. Right now, inside the Shadow Palace, we will see right now the very first Wizard King, as well as Licht, currently right now dodging out the way of the current strikes. At the same time, Patri, who right now was still under the influence of the demon, this being Zagfred, would be aimlessly attacking the first Wizard King and Licht, while at the same time going to attack Yuno, who was also there. Yuno would be dodging out the way, as right now he wasn't even trying against Patri. Now you see, since Asta wasn't there much sooner, Patri was still under the influence of Zagfred, so yeah, he was still aimlessly attacking his allies and everything like that, going crazy. While Zagfred was enjoying all of this, as this is when he then says the word gravity, increasing it tenfold, causing Yuno, as well as Licht and the Wizard King to actually stumble slightly. He laughs until this is when suddenly a presence would enter. This presence, as soon as entering the Shadow Palace, would shake up the very core of it. This would actually cause the magic that Zagfred had on the rest of them to weaken up extremely, while the rest of them actually stumble, trying to force up their magic as much as they can, as they felt the magic that they were controlling previously beginning to just drop out an unbelievable amount of levels. Even the very first Wizard King, who had a ginormous amount of magic energy, he felt his magic drop slightly at the presence. This will be Asta as he slams through the walls of every floor of the Shadow Palace before reaching the very top floor. At this, he would arrive there, deeming his new transformation, which I'm not going to describe because I know it's going to get into some spoilers, and I know some people do not like spoilers. Which, if you guys actually read the manga, please do not spoil this for the people who have not read the manga, as I want people to actually just enjoy the transformation for what it was. So as soon as Asta had arrived at the very top floor, as he was with Yuno, the first Wizard King, Licht, Patri, and even Zagfred, as soon as Asta had arrived, just him being there in that form was enough to nearly wipe out all the magic that was there. To the point where, heck, even the very first Wizard King had to legit stumble a little bit just being in the presence of Asta. Who is this boy? Nero herself, who was also there, sorry I forgot to mention her, she would be there looking at Asta's transformation in shock, as she just couldn't believe that Asta was able to pull something off like this early, especially since he was still so young. Asta himself would be having a hard time controlling this new transformation as he focuses on the real enemies right here, this being Patri and Zagfred. Asta says nothing more as he looks at Yuno, who he himself was struggling to maintain the spirit dive. It looks like you're having a hard time there, Yuno. Yuno would get a tick mark as he tells Asta that he's perfectly fine and that he's only getting started, with Asta chuckling, telling Yuno that he's going to handle that guy Patri right now. Patri, of course, still being in this blind rage, would then attack Asta, cursing him out, to which Asta would instantly bring out the Demon Destroyer sword, as he just swings one slash down. As with that one slash, a ginormous slash mark would then appear across the chest of Patri, as he slams into the wall of the Shadow Palace. And just like that, the dark curse that was on him was completely revoked. So much power, everyone would think, as they couldn't believe the fact Asta just one-shot Patri like that, as this is when Asta would then turn to Zagfred. You're next, Asta would say. Zagfred would raise an eyebrow at Asta before smirking. Interesting. I've never seen a power like yours. However, I do wonder, what demon do you possess? Everyone will watch in bated breath, wondering what Asta's response is, only for Asta to smile. Oh, my demon is my friend. The friend who's going to help me take you down. As this is when Asta would then rush towards Zagfred at full speed. And Zagfred, feeling Asta approaching him, could feel his magic levels dropping to nearly zero. Stay back, he would say. He would summon out swords, as swords begin to fall from the sky above, some of them being real. Asta is able to tell which ones are real, because the magic ones are practically like very small, like they seem like very dull. They look like daggers instead of swords. So Asta is able to parry them away with ease, spinning around, swinging the Demon Dweller sword, destroying them all in an instant. You're gonna have to try better than that. Of course, Zagfred seeing this would then smirk, as this is when suddenly he brings out his trident, as he tries to stab it directly into Asta's chest, who Asta is able to dodge out the way. And this is when suddenly Asta would then cut off the arm of Zagfred. You're too slow, Asta would shout as he kicks Zagfred away, while everyone else would watch in shock. Who is that guy? The first Wizard King would ask, as he was genuinely amazed by Asta's strength and power. And to make it even better, Asta didn't even have a single drop of mana. That's what impressed him. Well, this is where Nero actually begins to give an explanation about Asta, about who he was as a person, about the Grimoire, and about everything about him. Of course, listening to this, the first Wizard King would actually be inspired by Asta, actually very happy to see how the new generation was turning out. Well, Yuno himself, not wanting to be outdone by his rival, began to take up the transformation. Which, I'm just going to say this, the next transformation that is shown, I'm not going to say anything about it, because again, it enters into spoilers, I swear. Black Clover, where have you been? Come back to us. We need you. We need you to start animating, alright? It's too peak in the manga. You need to bring it here. I'm sorry, guys. I'm sorry. I've just been reading so much of the manga. I've been getting hyped. And I've been wondering why it's not been animated. But either way, moving on. As Asta would be still into his transformation, Yuno would enter the transformation as well, as he would attack Zagfred with his own attack. Seeing the both boys developing at such high speed, having these dangerous powers that were just practically to the point where they're nearly destroying the entire Shadow Palace, this will surprise everyone that was there. As Libe would be there watching everything, actually glad that Asta was making use of his ability, he will smirk. Lichita, your son truly is an amazing person, just like you are, he would say. As by this point, Libe had already found out that Asta was Lichita's son, as just the way these two were, and just the way Asta acts and how he looks and everything, there's no doubt about it. And seeing the fact that he was here to see Asta's growth and seeing how strong Asta became, he can't help but actually smile at this, almost like an older brother. As this is when, as Asta and Yuno continue on the fight, this fight will continue on for multiple minutes, with Zackfred not giving the two of them an inch. Well, no, actually it's the other way around, with Asta and Yuno not giving Zackfred an inch as the man was trying to run away. Dang it, you bastard! He would say, as this is when he then activates one of his most dangerous spells. As this is when a generous amount of dark blobs, or slimes, or whatever you want to call it, begins to form all around the Shadow Palace, as whoever gets absorbed into it would practically be, well, disintegrated. There'll be nothing left of them. As this was the last desperate technique that he formed, trying to get rid of them and defeat them. However, in this timeline, Asta would actually gather as much anti-magic as he can. I'm not letting this happen, no way, Asta would say. He doesn't even know exactly what this sludge does, but due to Asta not wanting to take any chances, he uses as much as he can, already knowing that this will cut down his many minutes that he has of using this form down to only being 1 minute left. As Asta would then wipe out the rest of the black sludge, wiping it out with a single generous anti-magic wave blast, as it will completely destroy and disintegrate anything left of the black sludge. Of course, seeing the fact that Asta had used this technique and was tired, this is when Zackfred would then try to make a trident trying to stab directly into Asta's face, as he curses out at Asta, calling him a foolish human, while also looking at the trident approaching him. No, no, no! Asta would try to swing his sword, but he realized it was going to be too late. So here it is. I'm gonna die, Asta would say, as he would see that even though if he swung his sword, he would still be too slow to stop the trident. As this is when Asta would then prepare for his fate, already knowing that the loop was going to start up again. This is when the very first Wizard King would then come in, as he was able to blast away the spell with some light magic. No way. Sorry, but I'm not going to let you touch this new generation. After all, they still have so much more to offer, the first Wizard King would say, as Zackfred would curse while Asta would be there looking at the first Wizard King in shock, surprised that he saved him. Asta would then see as the very first Wizard King would then try to attack Zackfred, with everyone else beginning to join in on this one, trying to hold him back. Asta himself would try to jump into the fray, but right now he was struggling to control back the anti-magic, as he did release quite a large amount and a wild portion of it to destroy the black sludge. As he prepares to activate it once more time, this is when Nero would then rise up towards Asta, as she tells Asta that right now he's the only one who can finish this guy off. His anti-magic is the only thing possibly strong enough at this very moment to take this guy down. At this, Asta would listen to Nero as she would stare directly into Asta's eyes, as Asta would then look around to see everyone else trying their hardest, trying to put an end to Zackfred. In seeing this, Asta would then hear Liebe in his voice, well, in his head one last time, as Liebe tells Asta that the counter was now down to only 30 seconds left. At this, Asta would then smile. 30 seconds is all I need. With this, Asta would then charge in at Zackfred as the countdown begins to start, as it will go all the way down to 10 seconds left, as Zackfred would try making obstacles between him and Asta. Luckily, the rest of the people there were currently trying to help out Asta by either stealing away anything that was blocking Asta's path, or straight up just like giving Asta an opening. Asta himself was also doing a good job at handling anything Zackfred threw at him, as he was still inside the form that can pretty much erase anything that was thrown at him that was not exactly a strong enough to handle his current potent of anti-magic. So as Asta was making his way there, it was finally time for the final 5 seconds, as he would arrive right in front of Zackfred. No, I should have won. This can't be, Zackfred would say, as he would do his typical evil villain cry, but Asta would just tell him to do one thing, to shut the fuck up and die. As with those being Asta's final words to Zackfred, Asta would end up killing Zackfred with a cut across the man's heart, as Zackfred would be killed off right here and now. He's unable to do anything, as this is when he would then be transferred over to Liebe's domain, as Liebe was staring down at Zackfred. How did you, a puny wimp, beat me? He would say, as Liebe was not in his ginormous intimidating form, he was just in his actual form. As after being around Asta, Liebe realized that it didn't really matter what size he was. At the end of the day, it's who wins that matters. As he looks at Zackfred, Liebe smirks as he says that right now, it doesn't matter what a loser like him thinks. After all, only winners get to have an opinion. As with that, Zackfred would then be in shock as he would now completely die, fading away from existence, as this will put a conclusion to the Elf reincarnation arc. So after this, the rest of the arc will play out pretty much similar to the reincarnation arc like in canon. The only difference is that Patri, as well as the rest of the elves, do end up transferring their souls upwards, as this time Patri does end up getting, being able to actually pass because of the fact that Radius isn't there to just like bring him back and say, no, you're staying with me. So yeah, Patri and the rest of them are just like, able to move on with their lives. Of course, Raya, Fauna, and Veto do not get to pass away since they're technically fully reincarnated now, so they can't exactly go back. So yeah, they're gonna be stuck here, but hey, that could end up helping out later in the future. Who knows? Another thing that ends up happening during this time is the fact that the court trial would actually happen the same way, since Nero doesn't really change at all. She still sticks with the Black Bulls. In this one, Asta actually doesn't fall for their petty attempt to get him into court. In fact, Asta is able to see this quite clearly since his mind is more open in the story. So Asta tells Nero to avoid it, but eventually they end up forcing Asta's hand when they say that they threaten a young civilian, which caused Asta to be there at the trial room. Now Asta tries to explain to them and tries to negotiate with them, but like I said, the nobles in this world are truly high-tier bastards most of the time, as even though there were some people who actually liked Asta, due to the fact of him having connections with the demon, they just couldn't trust him at all, even though he saved their lives. So with that, Asta just didn't care at all if they ridiculed him. In fact, he was kind of numb to the whole thing. He didn't care what these people thought about him, because at the end of the day, he would achieve his goal, and that he wouldn't give up no matter what. Besides, what is a few people screaming at him gonna do? Alright? From everything that he died from throughout this entire story, this was kind of subtle. But this is when suddenly they'll then bring out Marie, as this is when Asta will then see them actually about to attack her and execute her, all because of the fact that, she had connections to the elves, causing her to be guilty. But Asta he just couldn't let that slide anymore. So with that, Asta actually ends up breaking out his cuffs, actually just using his normal physical strength. And as he does, Asta would then release this pressure, preventing anyone in the room to even move, to even breathe. Everyone held in their breath as Asta would then approach Marie, as the girl was terrified. But Asta would then walk over to her and pat her on the head. I'm sorry about this. It looks like you got mixed up with some wrong people. How about this? How about I return you back to your brother, and you guys go out to enjoy yourselves while I deal with these bad people, alright? Asta would say. At this, the person who was currently right now judging Asta would try to speak up, but he couldn't. Asta's pressure was rising higher and higher. As this is when Asta would then suddenly end up flipping through the pages of his grimoire before pulling out the Demon Dweller sword, as he ends up cutting up a ginormous hole for the entire trial. Nero, you take this young girl, and why don't you go get her back to her brother Ghosh? I'll stay here and deal with these people, alright? Asta would say. Nero herself was actually terrified of Asta at this very moment, as she just did nothing more but comply with Asta's demands, as he would face off against the rest of these nobles with a determined look. And no, I don't mean enough fight, alright? He's not that stupid, alright? He already understands that he will be considered a traitor to the kingdom if he does that, so he's not going to do that. But he will beat them at their own game. He will beat them using words. I know, right? Shocking. As from all the experience that Asta was able to go through, although he's still not really good when it comes to whole politics things, if there's one thing that Asta had developed, it was the fact that Asta was able to give a pretty impactful speech. As each one of the nobles would try to say that Asta was guilty, Asta would counter their point saying that if he really was guilty, and they really had sought him out, why isn't he attempting to slaughter everyone in this room? Why isn't he attempting to use his power to end the Clover Kingdom? After all, they already saw that demon right there was capable and strong enough to legit nearly bring the end to the entire Clover Kingdom. So tell me, what made them think that Asta, who possesses that power, cannot do the same thing? Now, this would actually cause many of the nobles to shut up, as they realized that, dang, this kid is actually kind of right, as they realized that Asta did technically, if Asta and that demon were connected, and that demon nearly ended the entire Clover Kingdom, and Asta had defeated that demon, or at least he was the demon, that means that Asta could potentially end the Clover Kingdom as well. Now, as Asta would try to refute their point, this is when the judge would then finally speak up, saying that Asta, it didn't matter exactly what his point was, and at the end of the day, he was guilty. As he was about to give Asta his sentencing, this is when the rest of the Black Bulls would then arrive, just like in canon, as this is when they would then show the document made by the Wizard King themselves, as the Wizard King had given it to Yami personally instead of giving it to Fuegoleon and Nozel. So with that, the rest of the events will play out the same after that, as the Black Bulls now go on a mission to prove Asta's innocence, and sooner or later they end up going to the Heart Kingdom, to which they will soon end up meeting with Lola Pachica, who explains about the events that have transpired with the Spade Kingdom, and how things are happening over there. And after finding out about the Spade Kingdom and listening to all this, This is when the queen would then turn her attention to Asta and the rest of them, asking them for help, as she would even contact Julius himself and ask him for help as well, considering the fact that the Spade Kingdom was going to become a bigger threat than both kingdoms combined. So after hearing this and after hearing her plead, Julius would then agree to team up with the Heart Kingdom, as this will cause them to have the 6-month training. So the 6-month training would pass, as this is where we now finally get to the taking down of the Spade Kingdom. And instantly the Spade Kingdom was in ruins. I'm not even gonna lie to you. During the 6 months training, in this timeline specifically, Asta had undergone the change and everyone else had undergone the change. Asta himself had pushed himself to the limit, to the point where he legit was not even like being able to move his body for like 2 days at most before he had to get back into working again. Asta would change to the point where he would fall unconscious, but he would do this all to reach this new level of power. Now, as Asta was doing this, at the same time, Yuno would not be holding back as well, as he would be training very hard. As earlier on during this month of training, he would actually find out that he was the prince of the Spade Kingdom. And after finding out how Zenon had pretty much arrived and taken all of them down, pretty much traumatizing Yuno and pretty much causing the fate of his entire kingdom to be what it was, this caused Yuno to train even harder, reaching new levels of power, and going to the point where now, as Yuno was currently right now waiting in anticipation, as he already knew Zenon was approaching, when Zenon approaches the Golden Dawn, Yuno will be there much sooner. And unlike in canon where he would lose the first fight, Yuno would win this one. He would gain a strength so powerful to the point where even Zenon himself would be caught off guard by this, as even with the power of his demon, he was still not enough to beat Yuno, as Yuno would completely destroy him, wiping out his physical form and leaving nothing left. At that same instance, you'll see in the direction of Lola Pichica, as herself was currently right now waiting in anticipation. This is when Vanica would then make her appearance known along with her own soldiers. Now, originally, if the timeline were to go exactly as it should have been, well, Vanica should have actually been able to take care of Lola Pichica, Noelle, and Mimosa. That's how it was originally supposed to go. But in this timeline, things would be different, as instead of that, Noelle would actually be way stronger than she was in canon in this part, mostly due to the fact that after seeing the emotional growth between everyone in the Black Bulls, especially Asta, as if you were to compare Asta how he was at the very beginning of the series to how he is now, Asta seems like a completely different person. Sure, he still has his like casual fun Asta that's going to be a part of his character for a very long time, but it's just Asta has now been more mature. He understands what it's like to actually kill someone. He understands what it's like to legit die, as he has done so himself. He's legit now understanding how to enjoy life even better. So due to this, Noelle seeing the emotional growth in both physical and emotional strength, she herself had pushed herself beyond the limits, allowing her to reach new levels of powers, as she was able to defeat Vanica in this timeline. As Vanica herself would try making a last-ditch effort as she tries to, powering up to everything she's got, Noelle wouldn't allow her to, as she actually ends up killing off Vanica, using a sea dragon's roar, able to obliterate her in the instant. As with that will put an end to Vanica. And the final timeline for this one, as this will be the final battle, would be Asta against Dante. As Dante himself would be currently right now outside the Black Bulls base, as he'll be trying to terrorize them. He's seen as they've been getting in his way lately, and he decided that it was finally time to eliminate them, unaware that by now Asta was making his way towards them, as he'll be tormenting the Black Bulls, destroying their base, and just trying to slaughter as many of them, except for Vanessa, because her power to manipulate fate was very interesting in Dante's eyes. This is when Asta would then arrive. He would shoot out multiple anti-magic arrows at full speed, which ended up stabbing into Dante's arm, surprising the man. "What?" he would say. At this, he would actually be surprised until this is when he feels pain as the arrows would then retract from his arm and return back into Asta's grimoire. "You're a very long way from home, aren't you?" Asta would say. At this, Dante would turn around to see Asta, who currently right now was in his full transformation, as it was almost as if you guys seen the manga, you know the transformation, but except it was like in an archer-like uniform. All the Black Bulls would smile at seeing Asta, as the man just knew when to arrive at the exact time. Asta himself would be staring down at Dante with a look of maturity and wisdom, as Dante seeing this had no idea why, but he got pissed off. He would instantly begin to increase gravity on Asta as he tries to make Asta fall down and bow down to him, as he didn't like the idea of Asta being above him, but to his surprise, Asta didn't move an inch. At this, Asta will be staring down at Dainty as he smirks. "You never faced off against someone like me, have you?" Asta would say. At this, Dainty will wonder what he meant until this one suddenly he would then feel himself begin to get impaled by multiple daggers all around. What? At this, he'll be in shock as he couldn't even see anything. Of course, luckily his regeneration begins to kick in as he blows away those daggers away from his skin, allowing himself to recover as he begins to take on a more disgusting form. "I see. You're not like the others, are you?" he would say, as he begins to raise up his power. Asta himself would be staring down at Dainty as using the ability to read ki, he could already tell what Dainty was doing and how strong he was becoming. Also, he could already tell who exactly Dainty was hosting. "So it's him, huh?" "Yup, no doubt about it." Libe and Asta will be saying this to each other as this is when we now do a flashback. Back then, during this time, as Asta was training and getting stronger and everything during the months, Libe and Asta got more time to become brothers as they began to talk to each other, share some of their origins, and during one of the times, this is when Libe would then tell Asta about Lichita, about explaining to Asta how Lichita was Asta's mother, about who she was as a person, and also the fate that she suffered. After hearing this, Asta was, of course, rightfully pissed off, but not at Lichita, no. He was pissed off at the person who ended her life, and the person who brought her so much sorrow. As this is when he then swears along with Libe that he will take care of Lucifero together. As this is where he now turned back to the present. As Lucifero's magic will be trying to increase to its fullest potential, Asta would then tell him that this will be his grave, and that he'll be slaughtered by the very person that he looked down upon. As this is when Asta and Libe begin to go full on ham on Dainty. Not even with the help of Yami, Asta was overwhelming Dainty easily, as the man did not have anything in his arsenal to counter this power of Asta. Asta had so much versatility that Dainty had no counters for it. Whether it be a powerful attack that could legit, that Asta cannot cut through, Asta can just bring out his shield to deflect it, or just block the attack. If Asta needs to, if he wants to land heavy damage, he can transform into his Demon Slayer sword. If not, he can bring out a black axe, as now Asta has a generous arsenal of weapons in this timeline. So that way he can prepare for anything that may come his way or anything that he may face off against in the future. So I'm just going to say this Dainty was overwhelmed by this version of Asta. As he'll be slaughtering Dainty left and right, Dainty couldn't do nothing. As he tries his best, even using the full-on power of Lucifero. As Asta and Libe would be looking down at him with pity. Unbelievable that this man right here had caused Libe so much pain, and more precisely Lichita so much pain. As this is when Libe would then begin to increase the power of Asta's anti-magic, as Asta begins to go all out fully onto Dainty. He didn't care about what may happen to Dainty later on. No, this man was going to pay for what he's done. Dainty himself couldn't keep up as he was getting agonizingly destroyed. As each and every single time he would try to regenerate, Asta would appear out of nowhere and just slaughter his form. He couldn't beat him. At this, by the time Asta was done hacking away at almost everything Dainty was as a person, Dainty at this point actually began to now crawl away. He legit began to crawl away from Asta as Asta was casually staring down at him. "I gotta run. I can't be defeated. Not me. I have the great Lucifero. There's no way I can lose." At this, he was saying this in his mind, but unfortunately for him, it was pointless. As Asta and Libe would dog walk Dainty as the man himself began to crawl away, trying to get as far away from this monster. As he stares at Asta and Libe, wondering who exactly were they. At this, Asta and Libe would then begin to get flashbacks of their childhood, about their lives, and eventually them encountering each other, returned by death, everything that he went through as they stared down at Dainty. A ginormous smirk came across both of their faces, as this is when Libe would then make his appearance known on Asta's shoulder, as this is when they both say their names at the same time, calling themselves the son of Lichita, and now the executioner of Lucifero's vessel. At this, Lucifero will be screaming out at Dainty as Dainty tries to do one last attack. Of course, the sudden influx of magic was too much on his body, so after this attack he will die, but he would at least want to kill off these pathetic humans. As Dainty would make his final form, he would rush at Asta and Libe, who both would stay there looking at Dainty approaching. At this is when suddenly the surrounding area began to morph. As Dainty was approaching, Asta and Libe would then be surrounded by darkness all around. What's going on? Asta would say, as this feeling was familiar. Multiple whispers of someone saying they love him, and someone gripping onto his heart. Asta would feel this as he would think that there was no way he died from this. He trained so hard, he prepared for so hard for this. There was no way that he would die from this, right? Right? At this, as Asta, of course, begins to, prepare himself once again, thinking that this just may be the end. This is when, instead of that, Asta would then feel the cold dead hand release from him. As this one suddenly, both Austin and Libe would then suddenly feel a warm embrace. They were getting a hug. Looks like you guys are now both strong enough and grown up enough to watch over yourselves, she would say. At this, Austin and Leo would then be in shock, as this one standing right beside them would be none other than Lichita. At this, Lichita will be right there hugging both boys with all she got. She was very happy to finally at once, even though it was only for a little bit, she was happy to be here with her boys. As Asta and Libe would be crying. At this, Libe would be crying mostly because of the fact that, he was able to see Lichita again, while Asta, he'll be crying because this would be the first time he ever met his mother. They'll both hug Lichita as she begins to say that she's very happy seeing how they've both grown up, as she kept her promise and loomed over them for so long. She tried her best to protect them, but even then, she couldn't protect them forever. She has seen the way Asta had died. She's seen the way he had suffered. And of course, as any mother, she tried to soothe her boy. But unfortunately, it seems as if she took a wrong approach. Because you see, the more and more times that she loomed over Asta and Libe, the more and more time her protection went out of control. Pretty much, the reason why she stuck by them by this long is because she felt in her mind that they were not strong enough to look over themselves. She was afraid that at any moment, one day, that they were just going to die if she would just stop looking over them, that they would die too early and visit her. And while sure in the beginning that was the case, but now, seeing as both her boys, as she was watching over them during the months of training, as they both grown up, as they both became brothers, as Asta matured into an adult now, she was now finally satisfied. She can finally think she can let them go now. She can finally let them go as they now have each other to look out for. So after this, Lichita would then say her final words to both boys, saying how much she was grateful to see as they grown up. She was grateful to see everything that they experienced. Sure, there were the good, there were the bad, but even though technically they weren't all there physically, she was still glad she was there at all to witness their growth. She was glad to see the type of person Asta had become. As even though Asta had suffered, he had died, he had went through some painful things before, Asta didn't give up. He kept persisting no matter what obstacles came his way, and this caused him to develop into a nice, mature, and amazing person. And she herself was glad that Libe finally was able to connect with his brother, was finally able to make a friend out of him, as she herself already understood that Libe would want revenge on Lucifero, and she was, of course, okay with that, but at the same time, she didn't want Libe to throw away his entire life just hunting that man down. She was glad that both of them were able to find each other, and seeing the fact that how both of them had gotten so strong, to the point where they are now about to slaughter their enemy, she can finally say that it was finally time for her to let go. She put her trust in both of them, telling them not to visit her too soon, and tells both of them to watch over each other, as brothers should. So with one final hug and embrace, she would tell both boys that she loves them with all her might, before finally she starts to fade away. Asta and Libe will be crying hysterically as they see her vanish, as she wishes them both good luck, and hoping that they continue living long and luxurious lives. As we now return back to the current event, as Dainty was making his final attack, Austin and Libe will release a small bit of tears coming from their eyes before they wipe it away. As this is when Austin and Libe will then charge up their final attack, a slash. At this, Austin and Libe will then smirk at each other as they will then release one ginormous slash on Dainty, wiping him out completely. As the man himself, there was nothing left of the man. This technique was so powerful to the point that it even erased the literal life of Dainty himself. Like the man, there was no bones, there was no body, there was nothing left of him. Practically an erasure, but for life itself. As Dainty's body was gone, the vessel of Lucifero was no more. As Asta and Libe would now finally be done with this, Asta would then put the sword back into its grimoire as he looks into the sky, as he thanks Lichita for everything. With Libe doing the same thing, as both of them promise that they will see her one day, but until that day comes, we should continue looming over them and watching over them from above. As with those final words, we will see the rest of the Black Bulls begin to run over to Asta, telling him that he did amazing, as Asta begins to laugh and smirk as he'll be hiding the tears that were coming from his eyes. These were not tears of sadness, no, these were tears of happiness. As after everything that he went through, Asta can truly say that he finally felt at place. He finally made his way to the world, and now he was getting closer and closer to reaching his goal of the Wizard King. As to end off this powerful story, guys, we'll see the final picture between Asta as well as the rest of the Black Bulls. As see Asta finally happy, enjoying his life, as this is where we now fade to black. This will be the end of this What If story. Thank you all so much for tuning in with me, guys. It's been an amazing ride, honestly. Now, I know many people have their mixed opinions about this story. Some might say they're good, some might say they're bad. But honestly, guys, I enjoy for what it is. This was my first attempt at a What If movie, and I feel satisfied with it. Would I do a remake in the future? Who knows? But as of right now, I'm satisfied about the work I created. I enjoyed every bit of the journey. And honestly, although there's some things I do wish that I could put into this one, like a few more things, that involves getting into manga spoilers, and yeah, I'm not gonna do that. But right now, as of right now, I am satisfied with this one. So thank you all so much for coming with me, as this was my first ever attempt at a What If movie made by Seishi Samurai. Thank you all so much for being here with me. Thank you so much for enjoying the story. And either way, it's your host Seishi Samurai, and he's signing off. Peace and have a lovely day.